I'm going to call this meeting of the City Council of Hamilton to order and have you stand now for the national anthem. Thank you, everyone. Please be seated. And before proceeding with the business on today's agenda, it's my duty to an opportunity, sadly, to acknowledge the recent passing of Councillor Duvall's sister, April Duvall Meyer. And on behalf of Council, may I extend our deepest sympathy to the Duvall and Meyer families. It is now my pleasure to welcome Rabbi Jordan D. Cohen, who is the rabbi of Temple Anshe Sholom in Hamilton. Originally from Toronto, we'll forgive you for that, Rabbi Cohen has worked and studied in Canada, Hong Kong, Israel, the United States, and Sydney, Australia. Rabbi Cohen holds a bachelor's degree in English literature from the University of Waterloo and master's degrees in both Hebrew literature and education. He was ordained as rabbi at the Hebrew Union College Jewish Institute of Religion in New York, is married to Paula Baruch, and together they share 5 wonderful children. Rabbi Cohen, would you please lead us in prayer?
Mayor Marina, councillors, members of the community, good afternoon. As the days warm up and the snow begins to finally disappear, we approach the season of the spring festivals. Next Monday evening here in Hamilton and throughout the world, members of the Jewish community will begin to celebrate our festival of Pesach, the festival of Passover, which we refer to as Zman Cherutenu, the time of the Israelites' freedom from Egyptian bondage. It gives us pause to consider matters of slavery and freedom for all peoples, even in our own day. Just this last weekend, I had the opportunity to accompany a group of our Temple teenagers to Cincinnati, Ohio. And there we visited the National Underground Railroad Freedom Center, a remarkable facility devoted to documenting the American slave experience and telling the story of the Underground Railroad, the network of secret routes and safe houses used by American slaves escaping to freedom, the route which spanned the distance from the Ohio River to right here in Hamilton. What most struck our students was the display about the conditions of slavery that continue to exist throughout our world today and which touch even the most developed countries, just like our own. Last evening at Temple Anshe Sholom, an event was held to mark International Roma Day, bringing together the Jewish and Roma communities of Hamilton for learning, cultural exchange, and connection. We learned about the subhuman conditions and treatment that the Roma must endure back in their ancestral homelands of Hungary, the Czech Republic, and Romania. We also learned about the struggles of Roma immigrants who yearn to settle here in Canada. Often, for years, they must endure never knowing from day to day whether they'll be able to stay or whether they will be sent back to a place where their very lives are threatened because of who they are and the color of their skin. The Jewish and Roma communities have much in common in their shared histories of oppression and persecution. Today in Eastern Europe, The centers of the most virulent anti-Roma activity are also the centers of greatest anti-Semitism. Certainly we can relate to their efforts to seek refuge in Canada and the barriers they encounter. Canada, whose unofficial refugee policy towards Jews between the years of 1933 and 1948 was, none is too many. Last night, we Jews committed ourselves to support and advocate on behalf of the Roma. Why? Because our tradition teaches us to love your neighbor as yourself. And why are we taught that? Because you were strangers in the land of Egypt. The most essential religious obligation for Jews during the festival of Passover comes to us from the book of Exodus, where it is said, "V'higadeta levincha," you shall teach your children on that day, saying, "It is because of what God did for me when I came forth out of Egypt." Every generation we are commanded to tell our own story of the journey from slavery to freedom, from degradation to dignity, from the repression of the human spirit to the redemption of human potential. We do so every year so that we can identify and relate to those who are still in one form or another enslaved, and so that we can rededicate ourselves to freedom for all. When we remind ourselves of those who are not yet free, we must pledge ourselves to work for the day when all will enjoy full liberty, justice, and peace. Today we live in a world which still has its many pharaohs, a world in which many still struggle for freedom, even right here in our own home of Hamilton. This coming week, at this holy season, we join together, Jews, Christians, people of many differing faiths and backgrounds, to celebrate our shared heritage, express our shared aspirations, give thanks and praise to our God, and to tell our shared sacred story. And thus we pray. Tikal b'shofar gadol la'cherutenu, v'sanes gadol la'ashukenu, v'kol dror yishama ba'arba kanfot ha'aretz, Baruch atah Adonai, podei ashukim. Sound the great horn to proclaim our freedom, raise a great banner for our oppressed, and let the voice of liberty be heard in the four corners of the earth. Blessed are you, Adonai, our God, who redeems the oppressed. Amen.
Rabbi, thank you. One of the things that I might point out is that the Jewish immigrants to Canada who came to Hamilton flourished, and so have many of the Roma who have come to Hamilton. We have a larger Roma community here than many would suspect. And finally, I would say that the two anthems, the anthem of Israel, Hatikva, and the Roma anthem, which is called Jelam Jelam, are two of the most moving pieces of music. Thank you so much for your...
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Members of the public are advised that our meetings are webcast live by the City of Hamilton and temporarily archived on the city's website. Other individuals in the media may also be audibly and or visually recording this meeting. Madam Clerk, are there any changes to the agenda?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. We have two added matters of correspondence. Item 5.14, correspondence from a number of citizens respecting 231 York Road, Dundas. This item relates to item 10 of the Planning Committee report, which is before you this evening for consideration. Our recommendation is that it be received. Correspondence item 515, correspondence from D. Bruce Timms, Chair of Niagara Peninsula Conservation Authority, respecting the NPCA's response to MPP Cindy Forster's letter to Minister David Orzetti regarding the Niagara Peninsula Conservation Authority strategic plan. This item also corresponds to item 5.11 in this evening's council agenda. Our recommendation is that it be received. We have distributed the Public Works Committee report for your consideration, and we have an added notice of motion by Councillor Farr respecting item 8.2, liquor license application for Rock Bar, withdrawal of our objection.
May I have a motion to approve the agenda? Councillor Pearson, Councillor Johnson, all in favor? Carried. Thank you. Members of council, any declarations of interest? Hearing none. Approval of the minutes of the previous meeting. Members of council, I need a motion to approve the minutes of the March 6, 2014 special council meeting as presented. Councillor Ferguson, Councillor Partridge, all in favor? Carried. Thank you. Members of Council, a motion to approve the minutes of the March 26th, 2014 Council meeting as presented. Councillor Ferguson, Councillor Pasuta, all in favor? Thank you. Communications. Members of Council, you have before you Communications 5.1 through 5.15, inclusive. Taking each individually, first of all, correspondence from Harold Becker, President and founder of the Love Foundation, requesting that May the 1st be proclaimed as Global Love Day. Would someone like to move that? Well, the recommendation is to receive it. Councillor Ferguson. Councillor Jackson, would you like to second that? I'd like to second love. All in favor? Correspondence from P. Monteith, Executive Correspondence Officer, to the Right Honourable Stephen Harper. In response to Council's letter of February 18, 2014, respecting hydraulic fracturing or fracking, the recommendation is that we receive that. Councillor Pasuta, Councillor Ferguson, all in favor? Carried. Thank you. Correspondence from the Honourable Kathleen Wynne, the Premier, in response to Councilor's letter of February 18th, respecting hydraulic fracturing or fracking. Motion to receive. Councillor Collins, Councillor Jackson, all in favor? Carried. Thank you. Correspondence from the Honourable Charles Sousa, in response to Council's letter of December 12th requesting an exemption from coverage under the Benefits Guarantee Fund. The recommendation is that we receive this and refer to the General Manager of Finance and Corporate Services for appropriate action. Councillor Johnson, Councillor Partridge, all in favor? Thank you. Correspondence from the Honourable Kathleen Wynne in response to Council's letter respecting access to services for undocumented individuals. The recommendation is that we receive that. Councillor Marula, would you like to move that? Councillor Collins seconded. All in favor? Thank you. Correspondence from the Honourable Glenn Murray, Minister of Infrastructure and Transportation, responding to our letter respecting a proposed amendment to the Highway Traffic Act pedestrian right-of-way. Recommendation is that we receive that. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is an issue that I brought forward a number of times over the last number of terms, and it's the issue surrounding right-of-way. I think for the most part, most people assume that pedestrians in Ontario have the right-of-way, when in reality they don't. Vehicular traffic in Ontario legislated gives vehicular traffic the right-of-way over pedestrian traffic. So for a number of years now, to be actually accurate, I believe the first time I brought forward this motion in 2007, requesting that Ontario or Queen's Park actually amend the legislation to ensure that pedestrians have the right-of-way. We're looking at a 6-year period of time where we've received very little acknowledgement or attention to potentially amending the legislation accordingly. And you look at various jurisdictions, and we've had another pedestrian accident, or we've had a number of them just in the last few days. We are the second worst city in all of Ontario when it comes to pedestrian fatalities. Reality is, whatever we have presently is just not working. So when something is broken, as clearly the statistics show, then we need to fix it. And I truly believe, in having had the privilege, as a result of my wife being from Europe, traveling to France, and then seeing how the pedestrian right-of-way prevails over that of the vehicular traffic, it really does show, from my own experience, how I was astonished as an Ontarian, as a Canadian, as a Hamiltonian, in traveling to France, knowing how much the vehicular traffic respected me as an individual, simply walking as a pedestrian. I want that same respect for Ontarians and Hamiltonians. How we get there is through the provincial government, in that we are, as a city, a creation of the provincial government. And I keep on emphasizing this particular fact, in that we can only control certain aspects. We really govern ourselves based on the way the province allows us to govern. And this is one of those issues. And I think it's so important, the fact that we're second on the list of most fatalities of pedestrians is a crisis, and one that needs a solution possible. And this right-of-way legislation would be a tool to And I'm a little saddened by the fact that we're not receiving commitment to that particular initiative, and that's what I'm continually seeking and will continually bring forward accordingly. And I appreciate your time. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
So certainly, the letter has alerted to the province to the concern, so that's a start. So you'll move the recommendation, seconded by Councillor Pearson. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Correspondence from Niagara respecting the province's long-term energy plan. Councillor Ferguson.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I think everybody should be outraged that the province is going to increase hydro rates 42%, but over the next 5 years, that's a lot of money every year. However, I know from my 8 years experience here now, sometimes special interest groups have put out ideas floated. So I just need to know, I have not heard this factually from the province. It's all chatter. And I'm not sure whether Mike Zagaric or somebody else on staff knows factually that the province is in fact going to increase hydro rates 42% over the next 5 years, because if they are, we need to jump all over that. But if it isn't factual, then I don't want to be embarrassed by making a statement if they aren't going to do it. So through you to any staff person, maybe Jerry or Mike, can you tell me what the statement of the minister is on this?
We haven't heard that, so my recommendation, refer it to Public Works. We'll have Jeff Upton's guys read it over and report back to committee.
I move that be referred to the General Manager of Public Works for report back to Public Works Committee.
Seconded, Councillor Johnson. All in favor? Thank you. Correspondence from AMO respecting the highlights of the March 24th board meeting. Would the President like to speak to that?
I'll be happy to please move the motion as outstanding, and I raise the thing about the anti-spam legislation. It has a major impact on our municipalities effective July the 1st, so I would move that.
So moved and seconded. Councillor Pasuta, all in favor? Carried. Thank you. Correspondence from Ted. Go ahead.
I found it interesting, not this year, but the previous year, when our head of IT came in and made the statement that over 90% of what comes into our system here at the city is spam, and the anti-spam software kills it. That's a huge number, and there needs.
And all in favor? Carried. Thank you. Correspondence from Ted Gill regarding submission to Rapid Transit Plan. Councillor McCaddy.
Mr. Mayor, I would move to receive this, seconded by Councillor Farr. I think it's very, very thoughtful by Ted, of course, former city employee, Waterfront Trust employee, and Waterfront Trust board member. So I think it's something we need to think about. I'm certainly going to take it away and read it in detail and decide on next steps. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Jackson.
Well, Mr. Mayor, respectfully, I was hoping to do a little more with this, at least maybe referring it possibly to GIC if Mr. Gill. This is a lot of great information in here. I didn't have the time to absorb it all regarding any form of rapid transit planning potentially in the city of Hamilton for the future. Ted's a professional engineer. As Councillor McCaddy said, has served us well on volunteer boards. Instead of just receiving it, I'd love to somehow keep it alive and possibly refer it to a future GIC and see if Mr. Gill was interested in coming in to speak to us. So I'll leave that thought with my colleagues. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
So there's yes. Good. So moved by McCaddy, seconded by Jackson to refer this to staff or to a GIC. Okay. All in favor? Any opposed? Hearing none. Now we go to correspondence from Cindy Forrester, MPP Welland Riding, regarding the Niagara Peninsula Conservation. Did I miss one? Oh, sorry. Move to receive 510. I have to say what it is. Correspondence respecting the Airport Implementation Growth District.
With all due respect, I'd like to send this to our planner that's on the file for the AGG. I believe it's Guy Pepperella. If we could just refer this letter to him, please, for his file. Planner.
Seconded by Councillor Partridge. Any comments?
Yeah, I did speak to Guy about this today, guys, first tonight, and his comments were past the public hearing. We had council's taken a position. We can refer them if they want to take intervener status at the OMB hearing because it's after there. So we can send it to Guy, but based on my conversation with him today, they'll simply bring it back to us and tell them to take it to status at the OMB hearing.
Councillor Johnson.
And I guess I'm just being consistent. Whenever somebody writes in about a file, I just send it to that planner that's got the file. Therefore, it's recorded that they've received it. So if they ever have any issues later on, they can backtrack their paper trail to say whether or not they actually had commented on it. So that's where I'm coming with this. And there's a whole slew of them coming for another file later on. I would do the same thing with that. Send it to the planner on the file. There's your paper trail. So thank
Everybody
you.
good with that? All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Now to Cindy Forster, MPP Welland. Go ahead.
Thank you, and I'd like to move to receive 511 and 515. They're one and the same. They're corresponding with each other. They're setting up meetings, so we'll just receive these two for the time being, please.
So move 511 and 515 together. Johnson, Pearson, all in favor? Councillor McCaddy, do you want to speak to that?
I just, Mr. Mayor, I was aware of some concerns down in Niagara earlier. I think we talked about it, Councillor Johnson, and actually had the opportunity to meet with MPCA because they remember we talked about it in the budget process a little bit. I had a few questions, and to their great credit, they followed up on the questions we had in budgets that day and met with me, including the author of the second letter we have here before the chair, Bruce Timms. And I think they're doing a great job down in Niagara. I got the full explanation of their strategic plan and their commitment not to sell land that unless it makes absolute sense, or developing a new land securement strategy. And I can tell you, I was most impressed by what they're doing down there. And I offered, certainly as the Hamilton Conservation Authority chair and as a councillor or whatever in Hamilton, happy to help them if they need to communicate their approach to any local constituents or perhaps to the MPP that is expressing concern here or may not understand what the Niagara Peninsula CA strategy is. They're a solid conservation authority, and I'm very pleased to be able to say that.
Okay, Councillor Johnson?
The Niagara Conservation Authority is in my area. It's the Lake Nyapenko that they're most of their focus is on. They're in the process right now of doing a master plan, and it's part of the entire picture. And the property that this representative is more concerned about is out in Wainfleet. And as Councillor McCaddy said, was that they've been meeting with everyone and explaining everything. And again, they are meeting with MPP Forster, so hopefully that'll all get resolved. And I've got great confidence in the NCPA. They're doing a great job, and we're going to meet and finalize their master plan, especially for Lake Nyapenko and the Pembroke Conservation Authority. Thank you.
Okay, so 511 and 15 are moved and seconded. All in favor? Thank you. Correspondence from AMO respecting the new building fund. Go ahead, Councillor.
I would suggest that we receive the correspondence and refer to the General Manager of Corporate and Financial Services to report on Hamilton's ability to participate in the new Building Canada Fund.
Okay. Seconder? Councillor Pearson, all in favor? Carried. Thank you. Correspondence from Marguerite Mooney respecting various ward issues. Johnson, Pearson, Councillor Johnson, you want to speak
If
to
this
it?
is the 513, I believe this is really about the same file on 440 Victoria Avenue North. Again, the same thread I used before. Can we send this to the planner on that file, please?
Okay.
Thank you.
Seconder, Ferguson, all in favor? Carried. Thank you. Correspondence from multiple parties respecting 231 York Road in Dundas.
Again, I'd like to refer all these letters to the planner on that file, please.
All right.
Thank you.
Powers, seconded, all in favor? Thank you. Councillor Pasuta, may I have a motion, please, on the communications as amended? By yourself.
Mr. Mayor, it's in Councillor Partridge's hands. It has her name on the top of it, so.
So it's moved by Councillor Pasuta and seconded by Councillor Partridge that the communications be received as amended. All in favor? Carried. And Councillor Partridge may have a motion to move into committee of the whole for consideration of the committee reports.
Yes, you may, Mr. Mayor. It is moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Pasuta that Council move into Committee of the Whole for consideration of the committee reports.
All in favor?
Carried.
I turn now the podium over to the Deputy Mayor for the month of April, Councillor Pasuta.
All he gets. Just
Thank you, Mayor Bettina, and settled in now, so we'll start. So, General Issues Committee presents Report 14-002 and respectfully recommends item 1. Item 2. On item 2, Councillor Clark.
Hang on.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Item 2, boards and agencies. This is a request that we had put forth with regards to the Festival of Friends, and Mr. Zagaric was going to meet with the executive of the Festival of Friends, so I'd like to ask Mr. Zagaric for an update, please.
Eric, please.
For you, Mr. Deputy Mayor, staff met with the director from Festival of Friends last week, just reiterating our process as it relates to boards and agencies in terms of staff's role and council's role, and the fact that the grants are discretionary grants at the discretion of council, as well as we reiterated what is required from a reporting standpoint and highlighted what is the norm in terms of other non-legislative boards and agencies as it relates to reporting. We similarly highlighted, similarly in the sense that staff forwarded on an email to council highlighting what is typically captured in financial reporting and financial statements, and we reiterated with Mr. Lieberman what is expected typically as it relates to financial statements, including typically 4 statements: the financial position, an income statement, a statement of cash flow, as well as net assets and notes. So again, it was the meeting was more or less sharing of information in terms of our process. Mr. Lieberman did speak to the fact that they are compiling their 2013 financial information, and just made reference that in terms of convenience to the organization, that they're in the midst of their 2013 information, and I did commit to share that information with council, and I did so in my email to council last week.
Do you have an indication of when the 2013 would be available to you?
For you, Mr. Deputy Mayor, there was no commitment as to when that information would be provided to the city through staff, simply that they were compiling that information at this time.
But it's clear they understand exactly what we're looking for now.
For you, Mr. Deputy Mayor, in terms of our definition of financial reporting, again, we reiterated what is our understanding of financial reporting, including the reference to the 4 financial statements I spoke to previously.
Okay, so I'm going to suggest then to my colleagues that item 2C2, where it indicates the audited financial statements for 2012, amend that to 2013. Staff to follow up to make sure that that comes in, and the motion stands as is. Once we get that, then the remainder of the funds would flow. I'd be happy to move it if you...
Well, we can do that right now, Councillor Clark. So, Councillor Clark, you're going to move that one, to change that to 2013. Second by Councillor Partridge. Councillor, on that motion, I have other speakers, but on that, Councillor Ferguson?
Okay, just for clarity, through you if I can, to Mr. Zagaric. So, if I read this motion correctly, no more funds will be advanced till we receive that information?
For you, Mr. Deputy Mayor, as we understand the motion is the balance of the grant request would be held until such time as the financial reporting is provided to the City of Hamilton. And so that difference is a difference between the $85,270 requested and the $28,423 that has been forwarded to the organization in installment payments over the period January to April of this year.
Okay, so the $50,000 doesn't go out until we get the statements. And when would it typically go out, the balance?
For you, Mr. Deputy Mayor, subject to the approval of the budget, we would start forwarding the balance of the payments and installments. But in the case, if the following motion is approved by council tonight, we would wait as it relates to this organization until such time as they've met the requirements of this motion.
Okay, through you, Mr. Chairman, what I'm trying to get my head around, Mike, is it's going to take them probably a month to get because you're looking for a balance sheet to be generated. You have the income statement. You're looking for a cash flow statement and any other notes that the auditor may find. So it'd probably take a month to put that together. Would the funds flow before a month, or are we going to put them in hardship by holding this for a month, or when would they typically flow?
For you, Mr. Deputy Mayor, as I understand it, the organization's year end is September 30th, so I would expect they're in the midst of compiling the information. So just to your reference to that, it would require a month. It may not require that long if they're in the midst of preparing those statements, given that their year end would have ended at the end of September. So again, as we understand the motion, we would not forward the balance of the grant request until such time as we've received the financial reporting that has been requested from council.
I understand that. So the end of September 2013 would be the fiscal year end that they generate these documents for. You've now made it clear to them what you're looking for in the way of, I think it's called a notice to read or financial statement. Probably would take an accountant a month to prepare that. Would the balance of the 50,000 typically flow before, what's we at now, before the middle of May, or would it typically flow later than that?
For you, Mr. Deputy Mayor, it would typically flow later than the end of May.
Okay. So it shouldn't put them in any hardship then. If it takes a month to prepare these statements, then once they're in, then you can just flow the money in the normal.
For you, Mr. Deputy Mayor, I'm not familiar with their cash flow, but recognizing the fact that the event is not held until the latter part of the summer. Again, I'm not familiar with their cash flow requirements.
Okay. Mike, I just saw Lauren speak to Brian. Is there anything new you can tell us on that? No? Okay. I support the resolution then. If they don't need the money for a month, it takes a month to get these documents, that should be fine.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Ferguson. Have Councillor Partridge on that. Councillor Partridge, please.
Yes, very quickly. Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. I just pleased to support this. I just wanted to make sure that we're talking about 2012, that it could be flexible and changed to 2013. Didn't make a lot of sense to me to have 2012 audited and then 2013 audited, so I'm happy to support it. Thank you.
Okay, no further speakers. Mayor Bettina, not on that. So I had a mover and a seconder on to change that to 2013. So, and yes, you did on overall on number 2, but on this item, on C number 2.
Yes.
Okay. Councillor Moore, go ahead.
Yeah, that's when I raised it. Could I ask again, please, what was Mr. Lieberman?
Through you, Mr. Deputy Mayor, Mr. Lieberman reiterated what was provided to the city in terms of 2012 financial information, and as I stated previously to committee, that was the statement of operations. We did discuss what is typically captured in financial reporting and financial statements. I did identify that typically forms part of a financial report. And the norm is, again, that a financial report would contain 4 financial statements, including a statement of operations. And then we went on to discuss the process as it relates to the boards and agencies and the role of council and staff, and the fact that it is a discretionary process in that council hears presentations and deliberates on grant requests, and it's at the discretion of council as it relates to the grant allocations given the request before committee during the budget process.
Okay, I still am not clear on what you're saying. I inadvertently voted for the amendment at the last meeting and wish to have my vote recorded differently than on the amendment as it was put at that time. And I was told I could register that tonight. Now, 2 others who voted that way are not here. I don't know what that does to the vote, but I would like at least a note to record that. I felt it was too heavy-handed. Clerk, could record, please.
Mary?
Deputy Mayor, to understand Councillor Morrow's request, Councillor, are you requesting that your opposition to the recommendation that was noted this recommendation before you this evening, that you wish to be recorded
No,
differently?
the vote last time, I inadvertently voted for the amendment
Okay.
and want to be recorded as taking a different position.
Okay,
That
through
was
you,
a
Mr.
mistake.
Deputy. Okay, I understand. Through you, Mr. Deputy Mayor, the recorded vote that was taken at the General Issues Committee, if the councillor has a concern with how he voted at that time, he would need to raise it. This
No, I
motion.
was told that would be at council.
Okay, this motion is currently before you this evening for your consideration. Any way you wish to vote on this item this evening is
No, I'm talking about the last vote. I was told I could change my vote at the last meeting tonight, and that was reaffirmed this afternoon.
Yeah, my apologies, Mr. Deputy Mayor, but you would have to make that adjustment at the committee meeting where the vote did take place.
I was told I couldn't at that time.
I appreciate that, Councillor Morrow, but my advice to you this evening is that you vote currently on the motion that's before you and the resolution that was voted on at the General Issues Committee. When the minutes are raised for that meeting, you can then address it
Okay,
at that time.
I just, as long as I can get a straight story.
Council Morrow, you good now?
I can't do anything,
Yes.
according to the clerk. No, I'm talking about the previous vote.
Okay, thank you. So we're still on C2. Councillor Marula, first time.
Just quickly, Mr. Chairman, I think what I need to know, and I think what the public needs to know, is that the Festival of Friends have claimed that they are meeting the goals and objectives and the requests of staff accordingly when it comes to audits. I'm being told by certain sectors of the community that they're not, that somehow they're not meeting the policy. I just simply have a clear understanding. Is the Festival of Friends somehow isolated outside of everyone else, and they're being treated differently in that the expectations from them are less than that of other organizations? So through you, Deputy Mayor, whoever would like to answer this, I believe Mike would probably be the best. Are they in any way not meeting what we've asked them to meet from an obligation standpoint?
Thank you, Councillor. Mike?
For you, Mr. Deputy Mayor, just, and I apologize for repeating myself in terms of the communication that was sent to councillors earlier this week, but in terms of the process, staff request from non-legislative boards and agencies early in the year, typically August and September, leading into budget deliberations, information as it relates to financial statements. The request is that they provide their budget request and their most recent financial statements for staff to compile and provide to councillors for their information as you deliberate on the grant requests. At the same time, we provide information as to the council guideline to those organizations as it relates to the budget. In terms of what is provided by those non-legislative boards and agencies, we've identified that the other organizations that fall under boards and agencies provide audited financial statements, completed financial reports. And we did identify that in 2012, the level of reporting by Festival of Friends was an improvement. You may recall that in 2011, what was provided was an unaudited financial statement of operations. In 2012, what was provided was an audited statement of financial operations, but we did highlight the fact that typically what we would expect is a complete set of financial statements, and that would consist of 4 financial statements. So to the councillor's request, we request the same level of reporting from all non-legislative boards and agencies. What is provided by all, with the exception of this one, is audited financial statements, and we've highlighted that in terms of our communication to council, as well as in our meeting with Mr. Lieberman last week.
Okay, so in essence, when you're looking at the highest bar versus the lowest bar, although they meet the policy in the fact that it was set at the lowest bar, other agencies are raising the bar and providing further information. But Festival of Friends is not required to do that. Is that correct?
So through you, Mr. Deputy Mayor, what is requested is audited financial statements. As
But
I mentioned previously, there is no policy. What is requested is that level of reporting for council's consideration as you measure the financial risk of the grant being requested from the city as it relates to the organization's
My only point, though,
event.
my only point through you, and with all due respect, there's a difference between requested versus required. So that's what I'm trying to nail down here. Although it may be requested informally, formally, they're required to present what they presented. So, and I'm all for changing the policy tonight, so be it. But just for point of clarity, if we requested something outside or higher or raising the bar outside of what the requested and policy requested amount is, that's fine. If everyone else is doing it and the Festival of Friends isn't, then it's within their right to not do it, because there's a difference between requested versus required. My point is, if we as a council, and I think the intent of this council is to ensure that everybody is required to meet that highest bar rather than allowing for the lowest bar to exist. That's really, I think, the crux of my concern right now, is that if I were the Festival of Friends right now, and you've said to me, all you're required to submit is A, B, and C, but we're requesting D, E, and F, but I then go back to my board and I say, well, no, if this is all they require, then just give it to them, because there's a cost about the additional information. So obviously, as a good business person, somebody would decide to take the lowest cost avenue. Now, if we as a council decide to raise the bar and require that all of them, rather than a request, then that's a whole different ball of wax. And I think we have to be fair, regardless of personalities. We have to be fair about the process. So I'm prepared today to raise that bar for all events in the future, but I'm not prepared to be punitive if it's not required, because the request has been met based on the present requirements. Now, I'm prepared to move an amendment tonight to increase that bar, to move it from a request to a requirement, but I'm not prepared to be punitive towards someone who's met the requirement and not the request. Thank you very much, Mr. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Councilor Marula. Councilor Clark. Councilor Farr, first time.
Yeah, just so we're absolutely clear here, and Mike did review the content, albeit not verbatim, of his latest communication with respect to this issue. In his last sentence, he says about this meeting, Mr. Lieberman did identify that focusing on 213 financial information would be preferred, as it would not require going back and revisiting 2012 information, period. So that's to Ward 3 Councillor Bob Morrow's concerns. I think it speaks to that, and I believe it's exactly what has been referenced in this amendment before us tonight, and Councillor Clark will be speaking next on that. One of the things we didn't talk about, it wasn't mentioned, and probably because it goes without saying, but it wasn't a topic at the GIC and so far here tonight. I don't think there's one of us around this table that could argue the significance of the festival itself. That's quite separate from the topic at hand. The vitality that it brings, the historic nature, the record-setting crowds over many years, and the identity it brings to Hamilton, the Festival of Friends. So I think that's important, and I don't think anybody could argue that. This is a budgetary item that was brought up. During that debate, I did say that I would make an effort to reach out to the executive director, who does answer to this longstanding board. I did. He reiterated some of the points, and one that stands out, because it was some time ago now, was all you had to do was ask. Certainly, he expressed that publicly, quite obviously after, as the media did pick up on this debate that we had, the healthy debate that we had some weeks ago. And so, full circle on what I'm saying here tonight, I think through you to Mike Zagaric, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Deputy Mayor, the final sentence in your correspondence to us, Mike, is stating that Mr. Lieberman is perfectly willing and ready to focus on 2013 as it respects the issue.
Mike?
For you, Mr. Deputy Mayor, again, as part of our conversation, it was highlighted that the organization is compiling their 2013 financial information, so it would be more efficient for the organization to focus on 2013 rather than to go back a year and require their external auditor to not only compile 2013 financial information, but to essentially redo the 2012 financial information.
Okay. Thank you.
Good, Councillor Farr. Councillor Clark for the second time now, please.
Thank you, Mr. Zagaric, through you, Mr. Chairman. So all of the organizations that are under boards and agencies, they all receive the same letter under your signature?
For you, Mr. Deputy Mayor, the correspondence comes out of my department. It's the identical correspondence that goes out to all of our non-legislative boards and agencies, again, identifying Council's guideline as it relates to the upcoming budget deliberations, as well as the information that's being requested so that staff can compile that information for the benefit of committee as you deliberate on the grant requests. I just want to point out that this process has not changed.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
I just want to point out that this process has not changed since, I believe, 2005, and we followed the same process.
2005. Oh, that's the practice that we've been following since 2005?
For you, Mr. Deputy Mayor, yes, and in terms of the information that is provided to committee members as it relates to boards and agencies, you may be very familiar with the information because we've compiled the same information in the same format since that time.
And the other boards and agencies, have they complied with that request since 2005?
For you, Mr. Deputy Mayor, I do believe absolutely in the more recent years, I can't recall going back to 2005, but I can't recall any organization other than the organization we are discussing this evening that we've had any issues with respect to their financial reporting.
So there was only the one that didn't comply since 2005. So, let's say in recent years to make it easier for you.
So through you, Mr. Deputy Mayor, again, in terms of our requests, the level of financial reporting from the other organizations, I believe, has not changed, and that is their audited financial statements. As far back as I can recall, again, the level of their reporting has not changed.
Question of our lawyer with regards to a municipality and having set practices. All set practices have to be set in stone as policy, or are set practices quite the norm?
Janice, please.
Through the Deputy Mayor, no, it's quite within norm to have practices in addition to policy.
And when a funding agreement between a municipality and an applicant, when that funding is discretionary and it's a standing practice of an organization, who ultimately has the say whether or not they're in comply with the request?
Through the Deputy Mayor, if it's discretionary, it's within the jurisdiction of council to exercise its discretion.
So, Mr. Chairman, I've heard the comments about the policy. I've heard lots of things actually in the last few weeks. But this has been the standing practice I understand one of my colleagues is going to move a motion shortly on a policy of some description, but I'm not sure he actually heard much of the conversation about this being a standing practice since 2005. Regardless, a practice of a municipality does not need to be a policy. We would be here forever and a day working possibly 5 times the amount of hours that we do now if we wanted to put in policy every single thing that a municipality does as practice. Question is it reasonable, fair, and equal? And all of those organizations were provided with the exact same request. It was the practice, and it's within our discretion. I think we're being more than reasonable by changing it from 2012 to 2013. I really do. Because if you don't do anything, then I guess we could receive letters from all of the other arts organizations who paid anywhere from $2,000 to $5,000 for audited financial statements for their organizations in those years and ask for a rebate because they didn't have to, according to some of my colleagues. When it's a request of a municipality to receive discretionary funding, that's the request. If you want the funding, meet the request. It's really that simple. Oh, I understand that Mr. Lieberman, through Mr. Zagaric, has indicated very clearly the willingness.
Councillor Clark.
Most of us around this table are willing to take him at his word. And then we'll have all of them all in compliance and we won't have an issue again. So I encourage my colleagues to vote accordingly with that amendment that we're switching it from 2012 to 2013. I thank Mr. Lieberman for coming in to meet with Mr. Zagaric.
Thank you, Councillor Clark. First time, Councillor Powers.
So just not to put this, as you're aware, we're undergoing a review of not only the CPP program, but the boards and agencies and all those things. One of those things that will be part of it is under the governance will be the responsibility of fiscal reporting. So that the issue raised by my colleagues around the table will be part of the report that comes to us that will impact, depending upon the, I'm going to call it the volume of dollars that flow to the organizations, will be the requirement for the type of reporting that they'll have to provide.
Thank you, Councillor Powers. Councillor Marula.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. Okay, clearly, let's take away personalities, let's take away emotion. Let's clearly look at what's before us. We legislatively, as a council, require a certain amount of information. We have, staff has, through a letter or correspondence, gone beyond that required legislative parameter and requested additional information. So, the reality is, legislatively speaking, he has met, or the Festival of Friends has met the obligation of this particular legislative body. The additional request is over and above. So if people choose to accept that from staff's request, that's their prerogative, but it's not required. All that the Festival of Friends has done is provided us with exactly what we've asked them to, through requirements, provide. So, we can keep on driving around the block a little bit, but the bottom line is this. What Festival of Friends has provided is exactly what is required of them. What staff has requested is over and above the requirement legislatively. Hence, I'm prepared tonight to move a motion to ensure that it becomes a requirement rather than a request, because requests aren't written in the law of this council. It's voluntary. So there's a difference between something that's legislated and something that's voluntary. So if community groups have voluntarily expended resources to meet this request, they have done so voluntarily, not by requirement. Hence, if there's a problem with one of them actually meeting our requirement, then the problem's not that one, but the requirement not expanding it or clarifying it towards where we should be at the request level. Hence, the problem is with this legislative body. And I'm prepared to fix that tonight. So at the appropriate time, I will move, since the bar has been raised, to the requested level and make that a requirement for audited rather than the requested. And that will be seconded by Councillor Farr at the appropriate time. Or Councillor McCaddy, I'm sorry. I must have misheard who was coming. Councillor McCaddy. Councillor McCaddy is far more intelligent. So, that was a joke. So on that scenario and motion, I will move that this requirement become one rule for all, as opposed to somehow, I don't know, deciphering between personalities who should or should not be part of this requirement. And that's what I'm trying to do. Eliminate all the emotions, eliminate all the personalities. Let's create one rule for everybody. Therefore, it becomes clear for boards and agencies. And that'll be seconded by Councillor McCann.
Councillor Clark, on the point of order.
It's not a point of order. Actually,
Point of order.
my motion's still on the floor, so we can't receive a second motion. And if the good councillor was listening to Councillor Powers, we already moved that motion as a part of our collective process on CPP. It helps to pay attention.
On that point, then we shouldn't even be wasting our time around this table discussing something that's redundant, since we have an issue. Therefore, Mr. Lieberman and the Festival of Friends isn't an issue. Therefore, we should be defeating what's before us. Thank you very much for supporting a more unified, formal response, rather than simply isolating this based on personalities.
Thank you, Councillor Marilla. Councillor Powers?
No, nothing. Questions? Call questions.
All questions.
As amended.
All in favor?
Stand recorded. Stand recorded.
All in favor? Mayor Regina, Deputy Mayor Messina, Councilors Clark, Pearson, Johnson, Ferguson, Powers, Partridge, Jackson, Collins, Barr, and McCaddy.
And vote. Close.
Councilors Marula and Morrow.
Motion carries.
Now, Mr. Lieberman. Just point of clarity. So now that we targeted an individual for providing what was requested of him rather than required, does this in essence then basically make what was somehow a huge issue in this community really a non-issue? So through you to Mike Zakaric, how does what is before us tonight remedy the issues surrounding the Festival of Friends?
Mike, please.
Through you, Mr. Deputy Mayor, as I understand the motion, the objective of the motion is to provide council a sense of understanding of the financial position of the corporation that's requesting the grant.
So in essence, we really did make really a mountain out of a molehill up until this point. And I'm glad that we're finally going to request universally and one rule for everybody, as opposed to trying to isolate people based on personalities. And I appreciate your time. Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Marilla. Councillor Ferguson,
Just
please.
for clarity purposes, through you to Mike. All the other boards and agencies, they're registrable charities. Are they not required to do this under Canada Revenue Agency requirements because they're registered charities? I didn't ask you, Mesmer. I asked Mr.
For you, Mr. Deputy Mayor, I'm not familiar in terms of their sponsorship and whether or not the sponsorship they secure in terms of either senior levels of government or other sponsorship as to what they require in terms of financial reporting.
But other registered charities under the Canada Revenue Agency, under the Canada Revenue Act, are they required to have audit statements in addition to what may be required if they're getting grants from other levels of government? Tax laws require.
Through you, Mr. Deputy Mayor, absolutely, but the form of the financial statements for not-for-profits is different than the form of the financial statements or reporting for profits. So there are some slight differences in terms of the form of the financial statements.
But they're all required to provide that basic information, balance sheet, income statement, and cash flow statement and notes, correct?
Through you, Mr. Deputy Mayor, yes, I'm not familiar in terms of what other granting organizations require in terms of their reporting.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ferguson. Councillor Clark?
And just to be clear, so the practice that was set in place in 2005 for all of these boards and agencies will continue. I'm sorry?
Calls me. I think there's a difference between question and required. That's all I said.
Councillor Clark, you have the floor, sir.
It just helps, Mr. Deputy Mayor, people actually listen, because we had the questions to our city solicitor who said that we can leave this 2005 practice in place and it's completely legal and legitimate. And I want to verify, while Councillor Powers' group in the CPP is being reviewed for policies, the practice remains as it has been since 2005. Is that correct?
Through you, Mr. Deputy Mayor, the practice has remained unchanged since 2005, as Councillor Powers identified. I expect it will form part of the report back of the CPP, boards and agencies, and art review. In fact, it was identified by internal audit as a recommendation in their review of the Community Partnership Program is to review the level of financial reporting from the organizations as an effort to measure the financial risk the community is bearing as it relates to the grant request.
Thank you. Just wanted to be clear. The public might be confused after everything that was said tonight.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Clark. On to the next one. Mayor Bertina, you were next on the speakers list, please.
With regard to item 2G, Public Works Department.
Yes.
The Public Works operating budget. I wish the clerks to note that I am opposed to book 2, page 289, bridge 163, the budget appropriation for that item. I wish to be registered as opposed to bridge 163 on page 289.
Thank you, Mayor Bertina. So we're still on number 2. Any other items on number 2 here? All in favor? Councillor Pearson? Okay. All in favor of item 2? As amended, of course, right? That'll be later. Well, Councillor Clark had an amendment on there. Right. Okay. I'm on to item 3. Item 3. Councillor McCaddy.
Thanks, Mr. Deputy Mayor. This is the HSR bus loop located in front of the McMaster Children's Hospital. It wasn't a budget item, but it came up as an update by HSR when we had our GIC discussion. And it asked, the concern was that HSR was being asked to move its buses, in fact, remove its buses from the front of the hospital. We were concerned that the passengers, students and others visiting the hospital would have to go out to Main Street and cross Main Street, a very difficult crossing, Mr. Deputy Mayor, for pedestrians, if the bus was removed from in front of the hospital. So I just wanted to mention to Council that indeed Chris Murray, HSR staff, Jerry Davis, Public Works General Manager, and myself met with Hamilton Health Sciences and McMaster University about 2 weeks back to discuss this issue, and it was great actually to spend time with Rob McIsaac in his new role as Hamilton Health Sciences CEO, and he was great in pulling the issue back a little bit, saying let's take a breather on this, let's look for options before we make any drastic steps on this, and I think that was a very positive step, and staff are now continuing to meet with Hamilton Health Sciences. I don't know if Chris has anything to add, Chris or Jerry have anything to add in the last couple of weeks, but I thought it was a very positive meeting, and I think we're on new tack with Mr. McIsaac, who we've enjoyed working with so very much during his time at Mohawk.
Okay, Jerry, got anything on that?
Deputy Mayor, further to the meeting that Councillor referred to, we actually met with them today, staff from Mumsey, McMaster, and Public Works, and we came up with some different options. There's going to be an additional meeting scheduled.
Jerry, just a moment. I think everybody's having trouble hearing. Okay, so if we all pay attention, please. Jerry, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We're going to look at the options we presented today. They're going to go on site, do some walkabouts with the three parties, and then have a meeting. I believe it's next week, within 2 weeks, to come back with what some of the options are for us moving forward.
Mr. Deputy Mayor, that's great to hear. I also had the opportunity to speak to the McMaster students. As you know, they're our largest stakeholder on campus in terms of HSR with the Universal Bus Pass, and they hadn't really been involved in the issue up to that point to any great extent, so they were keen to hear the positive update, and they have some ideas where on campus things might go as well, and very similar to, I think, the options that Jerry is speaking to. So it's good to hear that we're on the right track on this issue. Thanks, Mr. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor McHattie. Councillor Ferguson, please.
Just so I'm clear on this, it sounds like there's a new thing in the works, and the solution is very close, and everybody's pulling together. We're now, as council, directing us that it must be maintained. Does that position change now? Are we going to? I recall that Hamilton Health Sciences issue is they have their new emergency department with the doors near where these buses idle, and there's problems with exhaust fumes coming in, and there's problems with the buses traveling over the parking garage because it's causing some structural damage. So is this motion still correct that it be maintained, or that a new compromise be struck? I don't want to take a position, need a 2/3 majority to rescind. I just want to make sure, based on the new information, we're putting the right resolution forward.
Councillor McHattie.
Mr. Chair, my suggestion, my recommendation would be that we maintain this motion for now as a position, because we don't want to be bumped right out of the spot in the very short term. I would hope that indeed we do find another option that allows Hamilton Health Sciences to run the hospital in the way they'd want to, and to deal with some of the issues that Councillor Ferguson just raised, and they raised as well at that meeting that we had a couple of weeks back. So I'm hoping that there are other options, but I would suggest leaving the motion where it is at the moment. And indeed, with the report back from Jerry in the future, we may get to some other interesting options.
And just on that then, Mr. I think I still have the floor. I just through either Councillor McCarty or Jerry, I just worried that we take this heavy-hand approach. Council says, nope, it must be maintained. When you're having a good, amicable discussion, should we simply table this until we hear from you, or are you okay with putting this through and taking the risk that maybe they feel we're getting heavy-handed with them? And I think Jerry had an answer to that, and we can go to Brian.
We'll go. Okay, Councillor McHattie, go ahead.
Except, Mr. Chairman, I have the floor, and I posed a question to staff.
Okay. Gary, go ahead, please.
Through the Deputy Mayor, the recommendation says that the bus loop at McMaster Children's Hospital be maintained. We're looking at options that with the bus loop will be maintained, may not be right in front where it is now, but it will be. We're looking at maintaining a loop for both the university and Mumsey. So that's what we're looking at. So I'm fine with the resolution the way it is.
Okay, so you're happy that it gives enough flexibility that doesn't show we're being heavy-handed, doesn't put your negotiations at risk. Okay, thank you.
Speakers, let's have Councillor Clark and then back to Councillor McHattie. Councillor Clark, please.
So I tried to get this information last time, and I just need to understand, is it our property where the bus loop is, or is it their property where the bus loop is?
Through the Deputy Mayor, it's the property of the hospital and McMaster University. We're just a service provider on that property.
So we really can't maintain anything. We can encourage them to maintain it, but we don't have any. If they decide no, we're in a box. So we have to be negotiating regardless. So we have to hear back and have Councillor McCarty and whoever else is doing the negotiation continue.
Okay, Jerry, so Councillor Clark, you're through. Okay, Councillor McHattie? were you going to comment on that?
Thanks. Thanks, Mr. Deputy Mayor. And Mary just provided some good advice, I think, as she always does. But it says that the resolution we have before us here says that Council advise Hamilton Health Sciences, McMaster University, that the HSR bus loop at Mumsey be maintained. And she suggested that, and I'd be happy to do this, to change the motion to the Council request. If I got that right, Mary, nod of the head. So if we could change that to request, I would be happy to do that. That might be a little bit more palatable to some of the comments here. And I just maybe if you wanted to vote on that, I just have one final comment.
Okay, so you're going to change the advice to request, and that's seconded by Councillor Farr. All in favor? Any opposed? None? Okay.
Just a final comment, Mr. Deputy Mayor. It is unfortunate sometimes when we bump heads in different significant organizations across Hamilton. Hamilton Health Sciences is, as many know, to a great degree, our future here in Hamilton, as is McMaster University, as is the City of Hamilton in terms of organizations. But every now and then we do disagree. And it's important, I think, for the organizations such as City Council representing the riders on HSR to take a firm stance, as we've done here. And that's not done in any way to alarm HHS or McMaster, but it provides an opportunity for us to negotiate. It's always important to take a very clear and strong stance at the beginning of a negotiation. That provides clarity for the organizations to understand what our position is, and from there it's much easier to negotiate rather than starting at the low end and trying to go up. It's easier to establish a very clear position, and then we can negotiate from there. It certainly felt that way the other day when we met. It's very positive.
Okay, thank you, Councillor McCann. Anybody else on item 3? So, as motion was moved forward, approved, as amended. All in favor? Carried. Item number 4. Councillor Ferguson?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I unfortunately couldn't attend this meeting, but through the wonders of modern technology, I was able to watch the discussion through webcasting, even in faraway places like Arizona, and was able to place a couple questions on the council floor through my colleagues, Councillor Johnson and Councillor Clark, which was kind of neat to watch. Sitting down there, and I type in a question on my computer, and then I hear it be asked about.
Yeah, we sort of changed it about
2 or 3 minutes later. Unfortunately, I couldn't vote by proxy down there, run an electronic vote in.
Is that a Lobbyist Registry?
But this issue started, this enhancement of Route 44, with the delegation from Redeemer University College that come in to ask for enhanced services. And there's 3 enhancements that they were looking for. One was evening service, one was weekend service, and one was weekday service be increased from frequency from 60 minutes to 30 minutes. And of course, the issue I have is transit is still area rated, and a big chunk of this is in Ancaster because Route 44 runs right through Ancaster from Garner Road right up to the industrial park at the western limits of the community. And so I remember posing the question to the Redeemer delegation that of the 3 enhancements, in our line of work, we have to compromise all the time. What's the most important to you? And they said that the evening and weekend service was the most important. And after I returned, I had the opportunity to meet with Don Hall twice, and I met with Jim Doms a couple times also to get my head clearly around what each enhancement costs as it relates to the area rated portion that goes to Ancaster. And I've circulated the email, the clerk's department circulated the email I received from Jim, so it's on your blotters in front of you. But the enhancement for running evening and weekend services, which is the 2 that Redeemer preferred, which is the same thing I think that Mr. Everson's hearing from the industrial park too, that they have shift change at 11 o'clock. They like to have evening service also. To give enhanced service in evenings and weekend has a cost to a typical Ancaster taxpayer for the area rated part of $4.75. And that's based on a $275,000 home, which is the average price of a home in Hamilton But unfortunately, in Ancaster, that's probably half the price of an average home. So these numbers I'm going to put out, you can probably double because of the, the average price of a home in Ancaster is in the $500,000 range, according to the latest stats I've seen. But to add the extra 30 minutes through daytime takes it from $475 to $14 on a $275,000 home, or 3 times more. And so I'm not comfortable with that, primarily because I think we got to walk before we run. Redeemer's request was to for the evening weekend service. I mean, they'd like the extra frequency also, but their main thing was evenings and weekends. And to go from $4.75 to 14 cents, and I'm staring down another problem because the Memorial School site has also been declared surplus. Council's already passed a resolution they'd like to buy it, subject to the financial side of it. They pulled the trigger. We have to come up to make a formal offer to them by the end of June. And using the policies used in the past around the council tables, and I've talked to Mike about this and Joe, and they're telling me that a large chunk of this has to be area rated also. So I'm staring down both the bus enhancement and the area and the Memorial School site purchase enhancements. So I'm not comfortable with taking that 3 times the price on to add that third level of service. I have checked with staff, and they tell me that by going back to a 60-minute service for daytime, evening, and weekend can be done just in Ancaster without any impact to the other wards. And of course, the Route 44 affects Stony Creek and across the top of the mountain. I did have the opportunity this afternoon to speak to Councillor Jackson. Unfortunately, Councillor Whitehead and Duval is not here today, but Tom is a mountain resident. So it has. They'll still get their 30-minute. If I amend this motion, they'll still get the 30-minute service. Just at Glancaster Road and Ancaster, it'll switch over to 60 minutes. So it'll run out to the industrial park once per hour. And, I noticed yesterday also, this week, I spotted 2 buses during the day going into the industrial park. And I slowed down, pulled the side of the road just so I could count how many people were on them. And it didn't take long because there was nobody. And so I think I need load counts also before I can make this decision to go from $4 to $14. So at the right time, if you come back to me, I'd like to move an amendment to the enhancements for Route 44 in the Ancaster portion only. If there's no other questions, I'll place that motion now.
I have a speakers list, Councillor Ferguson. So
okay, you'll come back to me.
Okay, so I'll come back to you, okay? So just a heads up, I have Councillor Johnson, Councillor Jackson, Councillor McCaddy, and Councillor Clark. So Councillor Johnson, please.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Pasuda. First, I want to clarify something. It was written in the paper that the Glanbrook residents will be paying for this transit. So I had farmers and people way out in the rural area wondering why they were paying for transit. This is not affecting the rural areas, and it's not affecting several parts of Glanbrook that will never see a bus in a million years. So just to be clear, and I understand that the Redeemer College did have was the catalyst to get this going, but our residents, my residents along Rymel Road have been asking for this service enhancement for quite some time. I want to thank Councillors Jackson and Duval, Whitehead and Clark, because collectively we worked together to get this put on the table and get it working. I just want to put it out there that if we're going to put a service, we might as well put a service that's worthwhile. And having it there 1 hour on the hour and nothing on Saturdays or Sunday, it was just absolutely asinine. So people were not getting used to using the transit. The ones that had to find rides on the weekends to get to their part-time jobs. We have a lot of students that were going to Mohawk College, couldn't get to Mohawk College, or if they missed that one bus, they'd have to wait for an hour for the next one. So I'm pleased to support this. It's not as much money in Glanbrook as it is for the Ancaster folks, but I'm pleased to support this, and thankfully all 5 of the councillors came together and made this work for the entire stretch along Rymel. There's 6 wards that are affected. So anyways, this is great. Now people on Hannon can actually get down to Eastgate Square and move from there. So thank you very much, sir, for your time.
Thank you, Councillor Johnson. Councillor Jackson, please.
Thanks, Mr. Deputy Mayor. And after all my years supporting public transit and public transit enhancements for the Lower City, B-Line, student passes, this is a sweet moment. But I just want to reiterate, all my years of supporting public transit in the Lower City, for some who may not be aware of that, I just wanted to get that on the record, Deputy Clerk. So this is a sweet moment tonight. We're finally going to have some public transit enhancements on the mountain. Mr. Deputy Mayor, through to General Manager Davis, you've heard Councillor Ferguson's amendment he'd like to put in light of mitigating costs into the area rated Ancaster area. So, if you've heard his amendment, does that mean if we support that amendment at the Lancaster-Garner Road intersection and beyond into Ancaster into Tradewind Drive, the weekday running time would stay at 1 hour? Mr. Deputy Mayor, through to General Manager Davis.
Jerry, please.
Through the Deputy Mayor, that's correct. So the base in the evening, as was described, will go to the 60 minutes, as was indicated by the councillor.
So, Jerry, so then, from Garner Road and Lancaster, going eastward, and looking after my mountain colleagues tonight, one sadly, Councillor Duval, who lost a sister on the weekend, and Councillor White, who has not been well since the weekend. So on their behalf, but not speaking for them, but on their behalf is pushing for this, from Garner, Lancaster, going eastward across the whole mountain into Upper Stony Creek, Councillor Clark's area, Councillor Johnson's Ward 11, down into Councillor Collins' Ward 5. The running time will then be increased, made better to 30 minutes. Jerry, through you, Mr. Deputy Mayor.
Deputy Mayor, that's correct. It will stay at 30 minutes from Eastgate Square to the Lancaster-Garner intersection.
And we'll get weekend service on Rimo for the first time with this resolution here tonight, Jerry?
Through the Deputy Mayor, that's correct.
And we'll get enhanced evening service, Jerry, on Rimo?
Through the Chair, that's correct.
And we're going to also get, which I'm really pleased about, some enhanced service on Stone Church Road, east to west, going right across from Councillor Clark's area across the mountain wards, which is wonderful because a lot of people for work as well as school travel across. We need affordable transit for those, especially coming to work in the Red Hill Business Park and or for family outings, whatever the case might be. And we'll also have an extra bus going to the Waterfront, which is becoming more and more popular all the time as well. So, Mr. Deputy Mayor, I really would have preferred that Councillor Ferguson had left the original motion as it was. I really wish she had left it as it was. However, I understand the almost triple cost, I guess, it would be from Garner to Lancaster to his Tradewind Park to make the running time 30 minutes. I'm very, very happy we're going to have additional public transit. I'll tell you the reaction from my constituents over the last few weeks has been very positive to hear this. So we've got something more than we ever had before. I wish it had stayed the way it was from March 20th. But if Councillor Ferguson wants to support this, but that extra amount in his area alone is going to cause some additional financial hardship, I'm keeping an open mind, and I'm saying I just want to get some additional mountain public transit for my community. And on behalf of Councillor Whitehead and Duval. Thanks, Mr. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Jackson. Councillor McHattie, please.
Thanks, Mr. Deputy Mayor. And this was really a great day at General Issues Committee meeting to spend this kind of funding, $1.19 million on transit service level improvements. And you know, it's the first time in 10 years that council has actually spent allocated levy dollars for transit improvements. In the past, we've made some improvements, but it's always provincial gas tax funding. But this is the first time we've actually asked our residents to step up through our actions to support transit improvements. So it was just an extraordinary day, and as I recall, universal support by councillors who were there that day, which I think was almost unanimous. Most of the councillors, with Councillor Ferguson being away at that point, not able to attend other than remotely through computer and that sort of thing. And you know, just in the ensuing couple of days, I heard from Redeemer University students, and they were ecstatic by the commitment that we'd made, the full commitment to the 30-minute service. You know, 60-minute service is just not adequate. One bus an hour is not what the mountain should expect. They should expect more than that. The folks heading towards the Ancaster Business Park, although Councillor Ferguson may not have seen anyone on the bus in his analysis, the one bus that he looked at, I think there are folks that do take the bus to the Ancaster Business Park. Great paying jobs, but some of them are such that folks may not have vehicles and they've got to take the bus. And of course they choose to take the bus in many cases to their jobs. But remember that day, the Redeemer University students were just so excellent in explaining why they needed service during the week and the weekday, the 30-minute service. They're wonderful students, right? Because they go all the way down to the lower city and they get very active in lower city projects all throughout the lower city. That day that we had this discussion, the Beasley neighborhood folks were here. You remember there was a representative from Beasley neighborhood, and originally I was saying, why is he here? But he was here to say the Redeemer students with the ability to travel down to the lower city make a huge difference working on community projects, improvement projects, really making a difference in the lower city. And that's exactly what we want to see, connecting the upper city to the lower city, connecting Ancaster to the lower city and vice versa. And this service, the 30-minute service, provides that to us. I know that through the area rating system, which we currently have, and I know next term of council we're going to try and tackle the area rating policy for transit, but not until the next term of council. The Ancaster residents are asking to be paid to pay more for transit. These improvements that we're making here in the 2014 budget. I know that's a big commitment for the Ancaster residents, but I haven't heard from any that are concerned, quite frankly, and I have heard from a lot of Redeemer University students on how happy and ecstatic they are in getting this service. I think they deserve it. They've got a universal bus pass. They're buying into transit in a big way, supporting our HSR budget, as McMaster students are, as Mohawk students are. And this investment, the first time in 10 years that council's made this investment with levy dollars into transit, I think we need to stay the course on the 30-minute service. 60 minutes is just not good enough for the Ancaster and Mountain residents. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McCaddy. Councillor Clark, please.
Thank you. Can I just ask a couple of quick questions because I'm still trying to visualize this in my mind. So the bus would stop at what street? How far does it go? And then it starts as an hour service as opposed to every 30 minutes?
Jerry, please.
Through the chair. So there'll be a bus every hour that will go from Eastgate Square right to the Ancaster Industrial Business Park. And there'll be buses that will leave Eastgate on a 30-minute cycle that will go to the intersection of Garner and Rymel Road. They will loop there and then head back. And that'll be a 30-minute cycle.
Help me out with distance, if you can, the distance from Garner and Rymel to the business park.
Through the chair, I don't have that information.
A short walk.
Through the chair, I'll have to come back with the information. I don't know the distance right now.
Can I ask Councillor Ferguson? He would probably be closest to be able to.
Councillor Ferguson?
No, it's not a short walk from the intersection of Lancaster and Garner. It's probably 10 kilometers to the industrial park.
Okay, thank you. That helps. And the businesses that are in the Ancaster Business Park, rhyme off a few of them just so that we understand what's going on.
Through Mr. Deputy Mayor, probably the largest employer is Stackpole, followed by Activation Labs. Anderson Water Systems is there. BT, expanding and growing. And there's probably at least another 20 in there, but those are the largest employers.
And so, hypothetically, one of my constituents gets on the bus on Rymel and gets ready to go to work and then gets off the bus at Garner and Rymel and stands there for 30 minutes?
Through the chair, the buses will be, they'll have the identifier. So if it's going just to the Lancaster-Garner intersection, it'll be indicated. If it's going to the Ancaster Industrial Business Park, that will be indicated. So for somebody who would have to have the 60-minute bus, it'll be indicated on that bus. It won't just say you have to get off here and turn around. HSR will identify the buses for the different routes.
And has there been consultation with the businesses that set up there? I'm assuming they're using younger people or people that are taking the bus.
Through the chair, I don't have any knowledge of that.
Okay, I have trepidations. I hear what Councillor Ferguson is saying, but I can tell you it was incredibly frustrating in Upper Stony Creek having young people come to work, and then on Sunday they had to stand there or get a taxi because there were no buses. In this case, it'll be 60 minutes of standing there. Doesn't matter what time of year it is. 60 minutes of standing there waiting for a bus. Not sure that's what the people who put those plants in there, they can all come down to Stony Creek, I guess. We've got lots of room, but I'm just worried about those residents who don't have the money for a car. How do they get to work? And what condition are we leaving in? This was supposed to alleviate that, so I understand the cost, most definitely. I can see that, but I'm a little bit nervous about what we're doing here. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Clark. Councillor Marula, please.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. And let me start off by saying that I respect where Councillor Ferguson is coming from, and I understand that he's trying to mitigate some of the costs, but I need to grasp what those costs actually are per household. So through you, Mr. Deputy Mayor, to staff, what would the difference be between what is being proposed versus what Councillor Ferguson is proposing per household? For Ancaster.
Mike, if you can, please.
For you, Mr. Deputy Mayor, what was approved at GIC with respect to Route 44, the increase would amount to $14, and the amendments being deliberated this evening would reduce that to $4.75.
Okay, so it's about a third. But on average in Ancaster, what is the average household taxation in Ancaster? I know citywide it's about 3,000 or 3,500, but in Ancaster, what is the average? All three of my sisters live there, so I know it's high, but I'm sorry? I have three sisters.
Just a moment, we're trying to look it up here. Hey, Councillor.
Mr. Deputy Mayor, we have the assessed value. We don't have what the average local tax impact is.
The average taxation in the city of Hamilton is 3,000. Is that correct?
For you, Mr. Deputy Mayor, yes.
Okay. So citywide is 3,000, but I know in Ancaster it's much more than that. So we're talking about the extreme. I know in some cases it's up as high as $10,000 a household for taxes at the municipal level. So what we're really dealing with here is really a very minor amount of money per household. And knowing a lot of the Ancaster residents, most of them are either transplanted Hamiltonians or coming in from Toronto, my family included. And knowing that their ability to pay or the affordability issue is not ever an issue, for those that I know there anyway. And recognizing that public transit, it has more to do, I think, in Ancaster with the business community than it does the local residents, in that you have people traveling to the inner city, to Ancaster, particularly the industrial park that was built, that don't have means to their own transportation, that rely on public transit. So in essence, I see this as more of an economic development cost, which obviously benefits the entire city, including those that live in Ancaster. So in looking at this through you, Mr. Deputy Mayor, how many people are actually traveling on public transit, where they're coming from, and their destination spot, I can assure you that the vast majority going into Ancaster will be going to their place of employment. And the reason why they developed their place of employment in Ancaster is for a number of reasons, whether it be the expressway, whether it be other means of transportation, but also because of our public transportation hub. So this is more to do, I think, with the business community than it does with neighborhoods or local residents, and something that we collectively benefit from. Even Rob Ford sees the value in public transit. He wants subways. He's willing to spend billions on subways. All we're asking for is really an extension to Ancaster's industrial parks, particularly, so that people can access their place of employment, but also looking at the social and environmental and all the other benefits to public transit. Build it and they shall come. And at the end of the day, what comes first is building a transportation network from a public perspective that entices not only those that work in Ancaster, but ultimately those that live there to access it as well. And speaking intimately, knowing the number of people that live in Ancaster, I think they would do it if it's a reliable service. And this initiative to downgrade it doesn't make it reliable. It makes it unreliable, which makes it unsustainable. And for that, I can't support it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Merle. I believe I have Councilor Ferguson.
Yeah, I found it interesting. We're having a big debate in my amendment, and I haven't put it yet. But I'd be happy to do that now if you're ready, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, Councilor Ferguson, you want to put it forward then?
Yeah, I move that the enhancement, and I want to repeat, there is an enhancement in here. There's some misinformation flying around that I'm saying no to everything. I'm giving 2 out of the 3. I move that the enhancement for the Route 44 bus route through Ancaster, stress that point, which is from Garner to the Industrial Park, include the evening and weekend service. So don't say there's no enhancement, but that the 30-minute interval component remain the same service level as currently in place, which is 60-minute. And if I can draw a second to that, I'll speak to it.
You have a seconder?
I'll second it to allow.
Councilor Powers?
First of all, the $14 is based on a $265,000 assessment. You can assume it will be at least double that based on the assessed value in Ancaster. And the people of Ancaster are also paying about $10,000 a year, and they're taxed out. They've had enough. It's the #1 issue for me during my last election campaign. Why do you think I'm frugal Fergie around this table? Because that's the message they're giving me. Cut costs, watch the dollars. And what I want to do is walk before I run. So let's try these 2 enhancements, and let's measure the uptake. One thing I wasn't able to get from staff when I asked questions about was what's the load count? How many people are actually going out there? How many people are using it? Because I watched the bus service has been running for years through Wilson Street, and most of the time those buses run empty. And I'm not sure what the reason for enhancing the system if there is no need. I know it's a chicken and egg thing, but I want to do this in small steps. So if there's big uptake and we are enhancing and giving evening service to people like Stackpole who run shifts, or ACT Labs who run shifts, so there'll be the service at 11 o'clock when the shift changed, which they don't have now. I'm agreeing to that. And I heard the statement say that there's been no increase to service in Ancaster on the rate on the levy for 10 years. Wrong. We started bus service to the Industrial Park 3 years ago, and I thought, it's the right thing to do for the whole city. So let's start the bus service going to the park, even though Ancaster pays 100% of the cost from Lancaster Road in for about 10 kilometers. And maybe some members of council haven't heard from the people of Ancaster, but I have. Loud and clear. They're annoyed because they won't use it. And why are we paying for it? And they already, since they're paying an average of about $10,000 a year in taxes, think that they're taxed out. And so I'm listening to my constituents. That's my job. And they're telling me very clearly that they don't want an enhancement that they have to pay for to take this bus service. So I want to do it in baby steps. And once again, I'm repeating myself, but I got Memorial School coming in May, and that's going to be another big hit to area rating for my community, for something my community does want. So I don't want to take this all off in one chunk. Next year, look, if Jim tells me that the load counts are good out to that park, there's big uptake, then fine, I'll move to the next step. But let's do it one step at a time. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ferguson. And on that, I have Councillor Clark.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate Councillor Ferguson clarifying his comments. I'm reminded that when we started talking about these enhancements, that Councillor Jackson and I, we were talking about, we'd love to have everything that is on the document, and it was a very colorful slide. But we also were aware that it was not feasible to jump to that point all at once. Was going to create significant burdens for many people, and we really don't know what each burden is across the municipality. Some may not have any financial burdens, and I wish I was one of those people, but others do have financial burdens. And so we never know what happens when we increase taxes, and that's why we've been so strong and hard-headed about trying to minimize the tax increases across the municipality. So Councillor Jackson and I were willing to accept it as a phased-in because we're getting service in Rymal, we're getting service in Stone Church. It was service that he's been arguing for before my time, and for 8 years I've been arguing, and it's been slow, incremental, methodical increase in transit to the residents. They've understood it. For those who don't use it, I think they were appreciative of the slower approach, but ultimately everyone could see where we were headed. We were wanting to increase the amount of transit in the community. So tonight I'm fine supporting Councillor Ferguson's amendment because he's doing the same thing. He's simply doing the same thing as what Councillor Jackson and I suggested, was to phase it so that his community can get used to it, and as we move forward, we can add more on each year or each other year or whatever the case is. But I think everyone understands that we have to improve transit for the entire community of Hamilton, not just for certain areas. And so we are moving in that direction. And I thank the colleagues for helping and supporting Councillor Whitehead and Duval, myself, and Jackson, and then Councillor Johnson and Councillor Ferguson, because this is a significant route. Actually even goes down through Councillor Collins' area, the Highway 20 run. So I appreciate that. I appreciate the concerns that Councillor Ferguson is making forth today. And I think it's a pragmatic approach. So I will support him on his amendment.
Thank you, Councillor Clark. No further speakers on this. So Councillor Ferguson's amendment, seconded by Councillor Powers. Standing recorded vote. All in favor of the amendment?
Deputy Mayor Basuda, Councillors Clark, Pearson, Johnson, Ferguson, Powers, Partridge, and Jackson.
Those opposed?
Mayor Bertina, Councillors Collins, Marula, Farr, and McCaddy.
Amendment carries, Mr. Deputy Mayor.
Carries. Okay. And item 4 as amended, all in favor? Carried. Any opposed? Seeing none, okay. Item number 5? Carried. Item number 6? Carried. Item number 7? Thanks, everyone. Item number 8? Carried. Item number 9? Carried. Item number 10? Carried. Item number 11? Carried. Mayor Bertina, would you like to introduce your amending motion, please?
I would. The motion is that information item DB, respecting the 2014 tax levy, tabled at the March 22, 2014 meeting of the Central Issues Committee, be lifted. That's seconded by Councillor Powers.
Seconded by Councillor Powers. And that's the motion that we have on our blotter?
That's the motion on the blotter.
Okay. So I have
I'm lifting it.
You're lifting it.
Yeah.
So all in favor of lifting it?
Yeah.
Any opposed? Okay.
Now I have a motion that the following item be added as item 12, to the General Issues Committee Report 14-002. And that is that the City Solicitor and Corporate Counsel be authorized and directed to prepare all necessary bylaws for Council approval for the purpose of establishing the tax levy. Seconded by Councillor Powers. That is the motion to approve the tax budget. Standing recorded.
So, just a minute. Okay. Councillor Johnson.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I just wanted to remind my residents, this is the last year of the 4-year phase-in, and this was to get area rated all settled down. I always said that you would pay for the tax or the services that you received. And the biggest hit in my ward were the urban folks who were actually paying for part-time firefighters, and in fact, they were getting full-time firefighting. So they went from $69 a year to $348 a year. Big difference, and that's why we phased it in. And just to get some sort of perspective here, the rural folks have got a bit of an increase this year as well, because this is enhancing the part-time firefighters and their benefits package. So, having said that, I am supporting what's in front of us here today. It's giving our residents, especially those in Ward 11, better firefighting services, and I just want to thank the staff for helping me through all this and understanding it. I've always understood the area rating, I thought, very well, and this is just one more layer on top of that. This is the last year for this phase-in. Next year, everything will be on par. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Johnson. Councillor Jackson, please.
Well, thanks, Mr. Deputy Mayor, and I will be supporting this budget, but I stayed up last night putting some thoughts to paper in anticipation of some debate tonight with the budget. Mr. Deputy Mayor, first and foremost, huge thanks to a senior management team led by our City Manager, Chris Murray, and all SMT for the outstanding job they've done, always being available for us over the last 6 months, primarily through this 2014 budget process. And our City Clerk's Department, primarily Carolyn Biggs, for always keeping us on track, keeping copious notes and minutes, and making sure that we stayed on the roadmap regarding our agendas. So huge thank you primarily to those. Mr. Deputy Mayor, over a 4-year period, if this 1.5 average is approved tonight, it's about a 1.22% increase each year on an average over the 4 years of this term of council. I think that's something truly to celebrate, the taxes being below the rate of inflation. Thanks to Mayor Bertina, he started us this term of council with sustainability. That was the buzzword, and I think this council has been true to that. All the services, programs, facilities, enhancements, retrofits, improvements that we've done, whether it's our great library program and library services across the city, maintaining our parks, rec centers, and arenas, always making sure, Mr. Deputy Mayor, those facilities are affordable, accessible, and available to our constituents. The transit tonight, the waterfront initiatives, and the waterfront initiatives are right across the spectrum, Mr. Deputy Mayor, on the social, recreational, commercial, and environmental side. We should be very proud this term of council with the Randall Reef cleanup. That's begun, Mr. Deputy Mayor, and further investment is going to come. Red Hill Business Park and other business parks, servicing shovel-ready lands for hopefully new investment to come, airport employment growth, infrastructure, back to basics. I think more and more our constituents have said, yes, provide new opportunities for transportation across the city, primarily in the lower city, for cycling, for dedicated bus lanes, but overall get back to basics with the roads, sidewalks, sewer, and water mains. One, Mr. Deputy Mayor, I want to highlight, it's a small one in a $1.2 billion city budget, but this council tonight is going to approve $300,000 so that catch basins across the entire city, something like 44,000 catch basins across the entire city, instead of being cleaned once every 7 years, will be cleaned once every 2 years. And obviously, there's still more that can be done, but that's a huge increase and enhancement there. And that only took $300,000, but took a lot of discussion and debate. City Housing Hamilton, it's very important that we continue with meeting our housing needs, Mr. Deputy Mayor. We're looking after the wide demographic spectrum from seniors to young people across our city, and the quality of life has always been second to none here, Mr. Deputy Mayor. We're open for business. We've continued to support boards and agencies, maybe not to the degree they want, but we're doing our darndest to, within limited tax dollars, to support. We've got great emergency services with fire and police. I'm very proud of our workforce. Yeah, there's a hiccup or two along the way, but overall 99% do their darndest to provide good service to our taxpayers, including frontline workers and Macassa, Wentworth Lodges, QP, HSR, ATU, etc. And we're encouraging more private-public partnerships, Mr. Deputy Mayor, with the new waste-energy facility at Woodward Avenue plant. And lastly, Mr. Deputy Mayor, I think on behalf of at least the constituents I represent overwhelmingly, we're a compassionate city, great citizens. We believe in the social fabric of our community. We always want to help those that are marginalized, provide tangible support for those organizations. And lastly, we're a multicultural city, Mr. Deputy Mayor. Someone once told me over 70 languages are spoken in our city, and we need to make sure all are welcome. And I'm just very proud to support this budget here tonight, because I think it does so much for so many people across our city and provides still for further improvements down the road. Thanks, Mr. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Jackson. Any other speakers on this? Councillor Marilla?
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. Let me start off by saying that I think anytime we're looking at our budget, it would be remiss of us not to acknowledge the fact that 55% of our budget is out of our control. So 45% of our budget, which we do control, we're able to find efficiencies within the existing budget. And that speaks volumes with respect to how the system is really broken. So the average household in Hamilton pays $3,000 per household, which really is representative of only 2% of what people pay in taxes all year round locally. So when you look at what you pay in income tax and retail taxes and so on, the average per household is $50,000, 50. The average that comes to the city of Hamilton is $3,000. Out of that average $3,000, more than half of it, we can't even control because of downloading and other issues legislatively compounded on our backs, which really speaks volumes to the fact that we are truly, all municipalities in Ontario particularly, are the most efficient run governments of any government in Ontario. And I mean provincial, municipal, provincial, and federal. And in saying that, I think it's key to understand that the challenges that we're faced with are more to do with the downloading issues in our relationship with the province and the federal government than it is with anything that we can do. When more than half of what we decide upon we can't control, there is definitely a problem with the formula, and we need to fix that. The more we recognize that, the more pressure will be applied on upper levels of government to make the necessary changes legislatively, because the present regressive nature of our taxation is not sustainable. We will hit a dead end sooner or later. We need to get ahead of that because, frankly, although, and Councillor Ferguson mentions taxes are high, I don't think the average person in Ancaster recognizes that 55% of what they're paying in that $10,000 has nothing to do with us and everything to do with the province. So let's call it what it is. And what I see before us at 1.5, and in the East End it's much lower than that. It's, I believe, in some areas almost zero, if not in some cases in previous 10 years, an actual decrease in taxes because of the way the area rating issues or the assessment issues play a role in all of this. So in saying all of that, we need to recognize that the challenges that we're faced with, particularly from an infrastructure deficit, are those that we need to focus in on. We need to really call it and not get too occupied with the low-lying fruit, but the key issues. And the key issues at present is legislation that prevents us from being sustainable, not because we make decisions that are not sustainable, but because it's legislative that's out of our control. And when you have 55% of your operating budget out of your control, the system is broken and it needs to be fixed, and people need to understand that. So we need collectively, it'd be irresponsible of us not to educate the public, because unless the public is aware of this travesty, changes will never occur. And I want to thank this council and previous councils for ensuring that we are the best run and most efficient level of government in Canada.
when you look at the reality. The fact that our credit rating is better than that of the province of Ontario truly speaks volumes. And I just want to commend everyone involved. Obviously, zero would have been better. In some cases in the East End, they are getting zero. But at the same rate, considering that the average person paying Cogeco cable, in some cases, are paying more for their cable than they are for police, ambulance, fire, snow removal, parks, and the other 258 services that we provide, I think we're doing a hell of a job. Thank you very much, Mr. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Merla. Speakers, this is Councillor Ferguson, Councillor Pearson, and Councillor Powers. Councillor Ferguson, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And the 1.5%, while nobody likes increases, I think that's reasonable looking at the rate of inflation, and in particular when over 50% of our costs are salaries and wages. Over 90% of our staff are unionized, and a large chunk of those are essential service like police, fire, and EMS, where we have interest arbitration where it gets forced on us. And you know, some of them are still warning around the province these interest arbitrators in the order of 3%. So I would like 0.2, but 1.5% is reasonable. And that's all I have to say about the budget, other than I want to thank the people across the front row. This is a grueling process, but I particularly want to thank Mike and his team behind him. The very clear way in which he presents to us, he has all the answers. He answers them all respectfully. And if he doesn't know it, he says he'll get it, and he does. I've been in his office. I think his assistant's tired of seeing me standing at his door and wondering where he is, and I'm sure other members of the council are doing the same. So I want to put a special thank you out to our finance staff, and particularly our general manager, who is no longer acting, but the real guy. He's the general manager of finance, and I call him our CFO. So that's all I have. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Ferguson. Councillor Pearson, please.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. And I also just wanted to ask first a couple of questions that I could to you, to Mr. Zagarek. Mike, could you just clarify, what did we start off with as percentage coming into this budget process?
For you, Mr. Deputy Mayor, we started the budget process back in September. I know it seems so long ago, and we started at a 2.8% increase, and today Council is approving a 1.5% increase, and that represents about $53 for an average or typical household.
Correct. And what does 1% as far as dollar value equate to? So what we have to reduce the budget by in order to reduce the percentage by 1?
For you, Mr. Deputy Mayor, 1% represents about $8.2 million.
Great. Thank you very much. And I just wanted, for the public's information, I think it's imperative that the public understand that. It's simple to say here, you know, we've gone from 2.8 to 1.5, but when you recognize the millions of dollars that have to be reduced in order to achieve that process, I'm pleased today, and I've been one of the most vocal every budget that we've dealt with, because in the outlying areas we're dealing with area rating. So whatever our final number comes up to, we always have the outlying area always has the area rating percentage that has to be added on to this. So we're always, you know, the suburban areas are always encouraging that we continue to reduce, so that we reduce the percentage that our taxpayers in the outlying areas are being responsible for. So I'm very supportive of the 1.5%. Certainly would love to see it lower, but it does recognize that we have, we're continuing to commit to the infrastructure initiatives, to enhancements in the city, and moving Hamilton forward. And I think that's wonderful. And I think our taxpayers will be appreciative that, we really don't have cuts that they're going to see a visible difference tomorrow or the next day as we move throughout the year. So I know for the residents in Ward 10, with the average property assessment value, we're looking at approximately 2%. That's with the area rating, so it's about $71 on an average assessed home. And I certainly can support that. And I just want to also thank all the department staff, Mike Zagarek, all the staff that in your department and all the departments who were involved in the budget process. Because as Mike said, this started last September. It's been a long, long process. And, it does get more difficult every year because we tighten up every year, but try and continue to be responsible. So thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Pearson. Councillor Powers.
So just building on what Councillor Pearson has indicated, over this term of council, over the 4 years, our total increase impact is a mid-single-digit increase for our residents in the city. So I think that's a commendable job. And once again, I thank Mr. Murray and the leadership of all his general managers, and obviously Mike and and Rob Rosini before him kind of taking us through the budget process. But I guess the final one I want to make is I want to compliment the members that are sitting around the table here, because as Councillor Pearson alluded to, every year there's always more questions or tighter restrictions. We've gone through the service delivery review, so there's tools that are being put in place in order to reduce the cost. Not too many years ago, I recall staff coming in with a starting budget of 13.4%, which, you know, if you're my age, you would have, you know, grabbed for your heart from that standpoint. But right now, the rules have been, the direction and the guides have been put in place by council, and the staff are aware that you might as well go back to the drawing board right from the very beginning, because we're going to send you back if it's not right. So I think collectively, the team that's been developed of the 16 of us around the table, and the senior management staff and all the people who provide the backup and deliver on those numbers should be commended. You know, you can always hope for better, but I think the realization that Councillor Ferguson has indicated and the realities that Councillor Marula has conveyed to us, and that is, I think we're doing not too bad with what we have to work with. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Powers. Councillor Clark.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. About 7.5 years ago, I remember coming in and learning that our property tax was 17% above the provincial average, and thinking, holy smokes, that's incredible. How are we going to get this down? And both this term and last term, it's been slow, incremental change, and we're now down at, I believe it's 10 3/4 above the provincial average. So that's a significant accomplishment for an organization that has not cut services, for an organization that has not laid off. You could easily lower that number quickly by laying off a bunch of people and employees, but that impacts a whole lot of families. So instead you have a group of staff and you have a group of councillors who have become very creative and come in and lowered our property tax numbers to the point where we're actually getting into an area that you know, we're ahead of many communities around us, and we were not that way. When you look in the past, we were behind everybody. I mean, there wasn't a community around us that didn't have lower taxes than us. So now we're actually getting highly competitive. 2 terms in a row with the Development Charge Review Committee. Not a fun committee to sit on, lots of numbers. But those development charges have become more competitive with other communities. In the past, we were being criticized because we weren't charging the appropriate amount for a development charge. And so that has changed significantly. And all these little changes actually impact the amount of income taxes that we don't need to take from people at home. Little fanfare for Mr. Zagaric and his team when they brought into the debt policy this year. Significant document that really helps to set the path for the corporation for years to come. And there, I don't even think there was an article written about it. Like, it just went over everybody's head. And yet if you went to a corporate finance guy, that's the first thing they'd ask, well, where's your debt policy? So excellent work from our staff. And it put me to sleep 4 times. I told Jay it was twice, but it was actually 4 times going through it. But I was incredibly proud of having that document come from this council. The value for money audit that we set up, that's another huge success for the council. So, I mean, can you look at everything and say, okay, well, taxes are now 0? Well, no, we can't. But you can say that the incremental increases in taxes over time are helping to lower that average property tax bill to the point where we're now being competitive with other communities, and that's why businesses are now very interested in coming into the Hamilton area. So I am very pleased with the budget this year. I know lots of residents would prefer no increases. It's not doable. And I think we have to be realistic about it, and I think we have. I think we've done what we can to keep property taxes as low as we can and maintain our competitive strategy across the province and Canada, for that matter. So I want to thank the staff across the front. The work they do on this budget is absolutely mind-numbing. I know they're accountants and they love that. It is mind-numbing looking at those numbers over and over again, but they really do come up with some creative ways to help the council reach the goal that we set. So my hat's off to all of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Clark. Councillor McCaddy.
Thanks to Mr. Deputy Mayor, and I won't repeat a lot of what's been said. It's a significant job that's been done by this council, 1.3% average over the last 4 years, and there hasn't been a council, certainly during the amalgamation time, that's come anywhere near that. So it's a substantive achievement. Should also mention, though, that our own city departmental budgets during that period of time are down in the 0.3 or 0.3%, almost down by close to 0% increases, no increases over that 4-year period, with the boards and agencies, police services board, other budgets that we have to deal with are higher, bringing it up to that 1.3% average. But the folks that sit behind us here, the general managers and the staff, have held it at almost zero for 4 years at our own city departmental budget. So that's a huge thing that they've achieved, feather in their cap, I think, for that period of time. And we've maintained services, as people have indicated, as other councils have indicated, during that period of time. We've actually added services, and the discussion tonight about transit is one of those services we've added this year, as you know. But the thing that I think we need to focus on, which we haven't been quite as successful on yet, is growing the revenues. We're talking about keeping the expenses as tight as we possibly can, 1, just over 1%. But we need to grow the revenues much more than we have in the past. And we are, in fact, investing in economic development here in Hamilton. We're adding building department staff to facilitate building permits, move things along. And I know Neil Everson and his team at ECDEV are making additional investments through our contributions here at Council to grow the assessment growth, because it's fair enough saving money, which we need to do, but we also need to bring in more revenue through tax assessment growth here in Hamilton. And we've been doing our best. We've had some hiccups on the reassessments for the old industrial properties, but I'm convinced in the next term of Council we'll start to see the revenues grow here in the city, and I think there's still room for additional decreases in our spending as well. We had that KPMG report, which we haven't fully capitalized on yet, with some opportunities. I think it was about 25 items, not all of which are viable, but certainly some of them are. I know staff are working up some of those ideas into something that we can consider the next term of Council, consider 2015 for additional improvements. So growing the revenues, I think, will be the focus of the 2015 Council, no doubt, Mr. Deputy Mayor. And hats off to staff and to this particular Council for the achievement over the last 4 years. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McCaddy. Councillor Farr, please.
Through you, I won't take a lot of time. I want to give Mike Zagaric an opportunity to maybe credit some of the people that he works with. He's talking to Tom right now. I can see that. Certainly I appreciate all the comments. Councillor Jackson, quite eloquent as he is at this time of year every year, when he sums it all up and explains to all of us, or reminds all of us, all of this value-added business that goes on behalf of our taxpayers throughout the year. And I think that's important. What makes Hamilton the #1 place in which to invest has a lot to do with what is before us today. There is most definitely a tie-in because part of the attraction is mitigating those bottom line costs in terms of tax impacts. Mike, through the Deputy Mayor, specific to reserves, and then I want you to ad-lib your own thanks to the people that have assisted you in this, your first full year, I guess, pulling this off. A few years ago, we were a little concerned about reliance on reserves, but you've also somehow, through this budget, managed to address that concern. Can you explain how, and then take a minute to thank people through you? And I'm through.
Through you, Mr. Deputy Mayor, I want to thank Councillor Farr for the question, because often the impact that this budget has had versus previous budgets with respect to financial planning is lost in our presentations. Often we focus on the services we provide, and they're most familiar to our citizens and our users. But in terms of the 2014 budget, it does represent an improvement with respect to financial planning. It represents approximately $6 million in investments to improve the city's financial position and reduce our risks, for instance, having year-end deficits going forward. And some examples of those improved practices include a lower reliance on reserves, whether it's our tax stabilization reserve, or some of our program reserves, such as in planning and economic development. It also involves providing the appropriate level of funding through the budget for programs that have previously been chronically underfunded. With, for example, risk management, you'll recall that in previous presentations we've identified the fact that risk management costs typically are coming in at in excess of $2 million, and it has been an underfunded, chronically underfunded program, and the 2014 budget sets out to amend that and improve the financial position while reducing the risk of year-end unfavorable variances or deficits. I want to recognize Council. I know there's been a number of references with respect to the tax increase over this term of Council, and 1.3% has been, when we look at our comparator groups, on the low end of our comparator group. And where we see that translated in terms of affordability, as you may recall, near the end of January, we provided you some sense of the outcome of that focus. In 2008, the local tax burden relative to income was approximately 6%. By 2012, that's dropped to approximately 4.8%. So I just want to recognize the efforts of Council in terms of reducing that tax burden, recognizing the challenges this community has with respect to income relative to our comparator groups. But at the same time, again, I don't want to lose the fact that not only has Council been focused on reducing the tax burden, you've preserved service levels, and you've improved the financial position of the corporation, especially through the 2014 budget. Beyond those actions, the 2014 budget enhances our transit service levels, our ambulance services, increases the financial assistance to adult day programs, increases stormwater management, provides an additional $1.3 million to winter control, and we know how important our winter control budget is after the winter we just experienced. It supports our capital program. In 2014, our capital program, tax-supported capital program, is approximately $290 million. We know how important our capital investments are, given that we have an infrastructure deficit of approximately $195 million annually. It also includes a $1 million reduction in the level of subsidy to our entertainment facilities previously operated by HECFI. So again, in terms of some of the actions of this term of Council, I just wanted to highlight some of those actions and how they translate into that 1.5% tax impact. I want to recognize staff in general, not only our senior management team, but staff in general. As Councillor McCaddy pointed out, over this term of Council, the departments have come in with an average tax increase of 0.1%. I'm not familiar with a lot of local government departments that have been able to achieve that while preserving services and service levels. So I want to recognize the innovation and the creativity of staff of trying to preserve our service levels and services for our citizens while trying to maintain that tax burden to our local citizens. So, in addition to senior management team, I think it's important to recognize all our staff who have input into our budget process and who work diligently, starting in the months of the summer months, as early as June and July, in developing our budget to the point where we are tonight, where, again, Council is approving a competitive tax increase. Again, I know it's a challenge for Council to try to balance the tax burden while trying to preserve service levels and manage our financial position. But I do want to point out that I think this is a very competitive tax increase. Again, you are preserving service levels, and improving the financial position of the corporation. Thank you.
Councillor Farr? Good to go, okay. Councillor Collins, please.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman, and I didn't want to let the opportunity pass without saying thanks as well to staff and my council colleagues for a very productive budget process, both on the capital and the operating side of things. And not really a year passes as we go through the budget that we don't learn something new. And I think what came to, to light this budget more than others is that, unfortunately, we've increasingly become reliant on residential growth. I know that's been a theme for us in terms of looking at increasing our commercial and industrial tax base. But one theme I think that resonated throughout the budget process is that our current increase that we've seen, the new taxes coming into the municipality, have been driven by the growth in both Flamborough and in Glanbrook. And that should be concerning for us, because we know that low interest rates aren't going to last forever. We know that our real estate market isn't going to remain as hot as it is for many more years. And so at some point in time, that growth will slow. And if we don't see some increased commercial and industrial assessment growth, that 0.8 number, which really is middle of the pack in Ontario. I know that we have record-building numbers and we see a lot of development downtown, and that's all tremendous. That's terrific, and our staff and our council should be congratulated for that, no doubt about it. But we're still in the middle of the pack in terms of true assessment gains. We're at 0.8%. And so we can't continue to rely on our residential new home builds for new tax growth in this municipality. So I want to thank Mike and his staff for being as blunt as they were through the budget process. So for as much as we've accomplished a great deal, we've made tremendous progress, as many of my colleagues have stated around the table, we still have a lot of work to do. And it's not just some minor tinkering. We have a revenue problem, as Councillor McCaddy noted. You know, on the expenditure side of the equation, we're constantly benchmarking ourselves, our corporation, against other municipalities, and we've done quite well in that regard. On the revenue side of things, though, we're hurting. And I want to thank Mike and his staff, especially Larry Friday and his group, for highlighting that fact and illustrating to us that there's still a lot of room for improvement, and that all goes back to our strategic plan, of which Mr. Murray and SMT have done a tremendous job with. So certainly want to thank all of those who've played a very productive role in where we are today to get us to this point. But as we all know, there's still a lot of work to be done, and I'm certainly very thankful of staff for providing as much information as they did through the budget process.
Thank you, Councillor Collins. Nobody else? Councillor Partridge, did you have your hand up before or not? No? Okay, Mayor Bertina, please.
Yeah, it's a really great day for us, and at the end of a great term, and the last budget of the current term. And the numbers have all been stated, and they're really terrific. I do want to emphasize, though, and Laura Fontana's not here tonight, but when we set out to get our union agreements, and I suggested to the city manager that we use this positioning statement: fair compensation, no loss of service, zero impact on taxes. And our unionized workers came in at 0, 1.9, 1.9, 1.9. And this was a really great accomplishment, especially when we're talking about the taxation level, because this is going to be a problem, I think, for subsequent councils and mayors, is dealing with our unionized employees. They've been through some tough stuff, and they can't be that happy right now with some of the things that have been published about them, because I really have a lot of confidence and pride. In fact, I was standing in the middle of Barton Street waiting for traffic to go by, and some guy waved me over, and he's a city worker, sanitation, and he said, "Thanks to you and council for standing up for us in that media coverage." So that's the one thing that that needs to be emphasized. And as Councillor Jackson referred to, in terms of the overall budgeting process, it's zero sustainable. Zero, as close to zero as we can keep the taxes. Sustainable meaning we continue to provide the services. But more than that, when you figure it all out and the numbers look good and the percentage of household income for taxes, as Mike Zagaric pointed out, has gone down from something like 6 to something like 4.8. So we are getting more affordable in those terms. But so much other good work has gone on, and Joanne Pryle's department, Dr. Richardson's department, improving the quality of life of our citizens. City housing, the improvements. City housing was a real mess when I came on the council 10 years ago, and we're vastly better than we were. So it's not just a matter of the money. It's are we bringing the quality of life of our citizens, all of our citizens, to a higher level? And the evidence is absolutely there. It's clear. Even the median household income in Hamilton is in the mid-80,000s now, and I think it was 10,000 lower. We're way ahead of cities like Toronto, Montreal. We've got so much to be proud of. I just want to finish by saying that I try to lead by example, and the legislative budget will show that the mayor's office there's a 31% positive variance. And so over the 4-year term, I've been able to operate the office. I can look out the window and see some of the great things that have happened and all of the successes of our office in working with other governments, getting funding and so on. And over that period of time, we saved to the taxpayer $1.5 or so million on the mayor's office budget alone. And I'm proud of that because we're hardworking people in Hamilton. We want to look after the nickels and dimes as well as the millions. And so I think we as a council can take pride in the fact that we have moved the city into a different place, and I can only anticipate greater things in the future with the caveat that debt and union agreements may pose problems for the next term. Those are my comments, and to everyone sitting up along the staff wall there, thank you so much for all you've done to get us to where we are. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Bettina, and if you would take the chair, please, I could speak. Thank you. Well, I have a difficult time with this budget. Flamborough, Ward 14, the largest ward in the city, all rural, no urban part of it. And still the amalgamation continues out there, and there's a few people that are still opposed to the amalgamation and keep saying they're paying all these taxes and getting nothing, no services. And I've been fortunate enough to the majority of the people, I explained to them what they are getting for services. There's services they don't see. The building department, the health department, planning department, we go on and on. This past winter was a good example of how well our roads were taken care of. I had lots of good comments, the long hours, the good job keeping our roads clean. So that's okay. But part of the problem is, and it happens in the city too, but in the rural area, very few areas have natural gas. This winter, a lot of places and the farms and the rural homes are on propane. And the propane is more than doubled. I can tell you from 65 cents to $1.30 I was paying for my shop and on the farm. So those costs, hydro has gone up exponentially. A lot of damage has been done to a lot of properties out there, and they're going to be a long time paying to clean that up, damaged homes and that weren't covered by insurance and equipment sheds. So there's all of this that just keeps adding up and adding up. And as a business person, and Councillor Ferguson is in business and understands that all of our costs keep going up. We try to shave, no different than staff have done here and the councillors around this table. And I'm going to pay a particular comment here to Councillor Collins, has a very sharp pencil and keeps going over the budget books and going over them. And I'm impressed by Councillor Collins and his work on this, and every one of you who contribute to it, doing a good job on it. I guess I'm getting hammered on a few things about fire out there. And I have a portion of Ancaster, my ward, that comes from Governor's Road to 403, and that's covered by urban fire in a rural area. And it's based on a mapping and distances. And we have full-time firefighters coming in the daytime. So whether it's for fire accidents, the firefighters show up. And I understand that and I respect that. And in fact, I had a meeting this morning, a long meeting with Mike Zagaric and Chief Rob Simons on it, and we explained it all. And I've had previous meetings with Mike too, going over the budget and the fire and items like that. So I have a good understanding of that. We do get recreation out there. I've had a lot of road work done since I've come here in my time, and including this year and this coming year is going to be a lot of road work done. I have a lot of roads that need to be covered. Yeah, I'm getting a lot of phone calls, we all are, on the roads that are damaged and the ripples in the roads. A lot of that will settle out as far as that. But we've got a lot of work done. We've done a lot of stuff this past year and looking forward to stuff this year. So difficult as it is, I'm going to support this. I support my colleagues and the staff and the work they have done. And if I need to explain to my residents out there, I don't like calling them constituents, they're my residents, my people, that I will be able to explain to them. But I do, like I run a business, I got 2 homes, kids got 2 homes in Dundas, one has one on Hamilton Mountain. We live in the community, born and raised in the community, we're part of it. So let's work with this and move forward. But my levy's a little higher, but I'm willing to accept that and move forward. So I will be supporting the budget. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Take the chair
Take
back.
the chair back.
I have a motion on the...
So, okay, Mayor Bettina, your motion, please.
Yes, moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Judy Partridge, that the second report, the budget report of the General Issues Committee be adopted as amended and the information section received. As amended.
Yes, standing recorded vote. Councillor Jackson, okay, standing recorded vote, please. All those in favor?
Mayor Bertina?
So order, please. Order, please. Carolyn, please.
Mayor Bertina, Deputy Mayor Pasuta, Councillors Clark, Pearson, Johnson, Ferguson, Powers, Partridge, Jackson, Collins, Marula, Farr, and McCaddy.
And any opposed? Seeing none. Standing recorded vote, full house. Okay. Mayor Bettina, I have on my, down here, may I have a motion on the report as amended? You just gave it to me. Okay, sir. We're done. Planning Committee presents report 14-005 and respectfully recommends item 1. Councillor Pearson.
Just on that, Mr. Deputy Mayor, thank you, and I just wanted to speak on this. This is with regards to the Hamilton Heritage Conservation Grant Program. There was discussions at committee, and this was a recommendation coming forward. It's a 3-year trial basis. It's a grant that residents who have designated homes can apply for. It's a maximum of $5,000 a year, and there is some monies that was left over from the downtown heritage accounts with regards to grants for improvements. Mr. Deputy Mayor, what this does is it creates a level playing field for residents, because previously our program only serviced designated properties in the urban area, in the CPI area, which is the downtown area. So this encourages and allows residents in all of the outlying areas and throughout the rest of the city to take advantage of some assistance that is available with regards to protecting and maintaining and improving their heritage features on properties that we would like to see maintained. So I just want to put that out there, that this is a bit of a help going forward for residents who have taken under their wing the properties that they have and wanting to maintain them that are designated. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Pearson. So on item 1, anybody else? Carried. Item 2? Item 3? Councillor Farr, item 3.
Just to be consistent with where I was at in committee, I'm not in favor of what's before us. And I also just want to highlight, this is the request to designate 304 Main Street East. Got a bit of play on the blogs and in the media. The Canadian Tire gas bar, this was actually not a designation that staff were interested in the report. The report spoke to a staff recommendation to actually contemplate putting the overhang, the canopy above the gas bar only at this historic Canadian Tire gas location and Canadian Tire location on the buildings of cultural and heritage interest list, which is much different than the way it's labeled actually in the report. And I just wanted to reference that tonight. That's what we did with 1,000 buildings in the immediate neighborhood not long ago as a council. So Just wanted to be clear on that, and I'm going to maintain my position respecting the other side of the argument as well.
All in favor? Carried. Opposed? Councillor Farr opposed. Item 4? Carried. Item 5? Carried. Item 6? Carried. Item 7? Carried. Item 8? Carried. Item 9? Carried. Item 10? Carried. Councillor Farr is opposed on item 10? Okay. Rest carried, okay. Item 11? Carried. Item 12? Carried. Item 13. Councillor Johnson, I understand you have an amending motion for item 13.
Thank you. Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Powers that item 13 of the Planning Committee report 14-005 be deleted in its entirety and replaced with the following in lieu thereof. Do you want me to read it? And it's regarding 1232 Golf Club Road proposed settlement of the OMB. So I'd like to move that. It's seconded by Councillor Powers, and if I could just speak very briefly to it.
Yes, please.
Thank you. I think that City Manager Chris Murray, I think you'll agree this was one of those files that just fell off the rails, and I'm really grateful to you and Steve Robichaud, Danielle Stevens, and Leah from the legal department. Thank you very much, everyone. We got it together. We got an easy resolution out of it, and I appreciate everyone's time on this, and I'm sure so do the Corsinis. Thank you very much. I move it, and seconded by Councillor Powers. All those in favor?
All in favor? Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Johnson, for taking the lead on that. Okay, that's it. Councillor Johnson, may I have a motion on the report as amended?
Yes, you do, sir. Moved by myself, moved and seconded by Councillor Ferguson that the 5th report of the Planning Committee be adopted as amended and the information section received.
Carried. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Just hang on. Hang on. Hang on. No breaks, because nobody ever comes back when they have a break. The General Issues Committee presents report 14-008 in respect of recommends Hamilton tax, well, number 1. Number 2. 3. On item 3, Mayor Bertina, please.
Wish to be opposed to C.
You want to be recorded as opposed to C? Okay, thank you, Mayor Bertina. Councillor Jackson.
Well, Mr. Deputy Mayor, for those that are watching by way of Cable 14, this is the Marina Management Agreement with the Port Authority. This will hopefully tonight ratify the return of Piers 7 and 8 down by the West Harbour to the City of Hamilton. Lots of potential, wonderful, proper fitting, appropriate investment to come down the road, continuing the momentum. Great thanks to our wonderful team of Chris Phillips, Al Dorr, Steve Barnhart, Lord Stasiak, Joe Speiler, and Rashish Mandani from the legal department. Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Jackson. So on 3 with Mayor Bertina opposed to item C. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Item 4. Councillor Powers.
Just very quickly, as you're aware of, the city a couple of years ago purchased the lands at 2555 Creekside Drive that was proposed for a multi-story, multi-residential building. We acquired the property with the funding to come from area rating, with the condition that I'm going to call it the neighbors, and the neighbors are 4 existing condominium buildings along with AMAC, a retirement home, and in partnership with the Rotary Club of Dundas is committed to covering the cost of the capital costs of the construction of the park. And it's anticipated that with this in place, we'll proceed to construction this year with an opening of the park in the fall of this year. So I want to thank my colleagues for their commitment a couple of years ago and their continued commitment, just showing once again how our collective communities can come together in order to how should we say, turn a sow's ear into something beautiful.
Thank you, Councillor Powers. All in favor? Carried. Item 5. Carried. On item 5, Councillor Collins, please.
Mr. Chairman, I need to be recorded as opposed to item 5, and I know we had a fairly good discussion at committee as it relates to the expenditure now of almost $100,000 on getting us to a point where, if you think back to where we were in 2008, we had an update of the Downtown Transportation Master Plan, which recommended a number of streets go forward in terms of two-way conversions. Following that, we had a study group, I believe Councillors McCaddy, Councillor Farr, and Councillor Morelli had met with a number of people who were interested in moving the two-way street issue forward. And so we found ourselves in a position starting the 2013 budget process with a lot of talk and a lot of buzz around converting some of the residential streets primarily in the core as it relates to two-way conversions. But we found ourselves at that point in time without a budget. And so during the 2013 budget, if you recall, the request was made, I put the motion, it was seconded by Councillor Marula, that staff report back to committee and council with an implementation plan that sought to implement the number of streets that were recommended in the Downtown Transportation Master Plan to go to a two-way conversion. And a year later, that report, as you know, was presented to committee, and that report actually recommended that it be referred, or the issue of two-way streets be referred to the citywide transportation master plan. And so I think for those of us who are anxious to see some movement on it, as you know, Councillor Morelli has been working on a number of streets prior to his passing, and now that torch has been picked up by Councillor Morrill. And I know that within Ward 3, they're looking at Sherman, Birch, Wentworth, additional lanes on Wilson. And so there's certainly momentum in that ward, and I know that Councillors Farr and McCaddy were making good progress. We know that the conversion happened in front of the new hotel. And so it's not just residents and business associations and or neighborhood associations that are asking for the two-way conversions. We've actually had specifically, we just passed one tonight on Victoria Avenue, where the investor who's investing in a very large brownfield project, multi-million-dollar development, actually asked as part of his application for the conversion of Victoria Avenue North into two-way. We know that we already had a conversion in front of the hotel downtown, Mr. Vranich's tremendous investment on Caroline Street. There was the conversion there to assist with the movement in and out of the new hotel. And so it's not just grassroots, there are actually investors who are coming into the city and asking for those conversions. So knowing that we have a plan in place, that plan is approved, and all we were lacking was certainly the budget. We certainly didn't want to end up with surprises mid-year where groups were coming forward and asking for the conversions, and our staff were bluntly saying to us, and have reiterated several times, there's nothing in the capital budget for the conversions. So the request for an implementation plan came back to us in December. That was tabled, only to come back now with a different recommendation that says we're going to study this all over again. So we're going to study everything we've already studied in the Downtown Transportation Master Plan. We're going to study everything that has already been looked at least once in the citywide Transportation Master Plan. And I think we're at a point in time where at least we can start working with individual citizens and neighborhood groups to get us into a position where we're going to go from, where it makes sense, one-way to two-way conversions. So I'm tired of waiting for this process. We've had subcommittees that have been struck. We've had dialogue around this council. I'm waiting for someone to suggest how this is implemented and how it's affordable. There's no funding in place right now in future budget years for any of these conversions that are listed in the many reports that we have in front of us. And so we're not talking about King and Main, as you know, they were delayed. We're not talking about Bay Street. As you know, there were recommendations in the Downtown Transportation Master Plan that said we should not go forward with those streets at this point in time. However, there are some no-brainers that are currently on the table that are very inexpensive. And so I want to start moving on those, and I guess I'm tired of hearing the same old with the discussion and the debate that's gone on around the table. I understand some of the consternation when we start to talk about the mountain accesses. But there are ways and means in which to move forward on this issue while leaving some of those projects that are yet unresolved from a design or even a public consultation perspective. There are those that we can move forward with. So I'm not interested in spending $100,000 to talk about this again, to study it again, to bring people from across the community into a room, to show them exactly the reports that we've seen, and I know what the recommendation is going to be. come up with some kind of an implementation plan and funding, which is exactly where we are today. So with that said, Mr. Chairman, I can't in good conscience support number 5, and I'd like to be recorded as opposed.
Thank you, Councillor Collins. Councillor Clark, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I will be adding just a few comments. I agree with everything that Councillor Collins has said and have reiterated it in some form or another in the last few years. We have a number of street conversions that were already approved, and whether or not the funding's there or not, they're sitting in a docket somewhere for someone to say, convert the streets. I understand that there's some consternation across the city about the larger streets. I share the trepidations about King and Main, perhaps even Queen. But as I suggested at the GIC, I'm not sure why we're starting the study process again when we did the study, we came up with the streets that could be converted, and they're sitting there waiting to be converted, and we're not doing it, but now we're going to do more study. So it starts to look to me like it gets political. And I don't want to be sitting here saying that we just moved this off the agenda for a year because the election is coming, because that's not the case. We've already dealt with these items. So my preference again is come together as a council, acknowledge that we've already approved a number of the two-way conversions, put together some phased-in plan in terms of where the money is, that when it's going to start happening, and then once that's complete and we have a good understanding and the residents have a good understanding that the sky didn't fall and things are still working smoothly, then begin the next process, which would be looking at other streets and asking the question whether or not they want them converted also. That seems only logical to me. Try and jam it all through quickly is a problem. The second concern I have is this has been fashioned for the most part under the similar plan that we did for the area rating. And I remember it all too well because I was sitting here, and this wonderful committee did a lot of work meeting with people and coming forward with some recommendations. And when they stood here, and I'm not going to name which councillors, it was like they were in a witness stand. Instead of just hearing their advice and asking for clarification, it became them defending their position, and they're not supposed to be brought in here to defend their position. Here's their recommendation. We say yes or no, or we modify it. But to have them go through that process, it was incredibly unseemly, and I don't want any citizen to have to go through that process again. So if we're going to go through this charade, then we need to have a very clear terms of engagement where their report goes to staff and it doesn't come to council, because to have the councillors questioning them for political reasons because they don't agree with certain things or they do, it just doesn't work. It really doesn't work. And not to mention again, this is still redundant over what we've already done, which is what Councillor Collins' point was. So I'd encourage my colleagues across the way to consider tabling it and not proceeding with it. Not sure where it's going to go tonight on the vote, but you certainly could come back with another motion dealing with how you're going to implement what's already been approved, and I'm sure that would be very satisfactory to your constituents and to the broader community.
Thank you, Councillor Clark. Councillor McCaddy.
Thanks, Mr. Deputy Mayor. And this has been a very interesting discussion at GIC, and tonight we had a report before us in December, which city staff came to us and they said, we're doing this transportation master plan review across the whole city, and we're hearing lots of discussion about conversion of one-way streets into two-way, hearing other folks that are interested in complete streets as well. And, we're hearing so much, why don't we just fast track that, move that ahead in the budget, in the transportation master plan as a priority item. Let's come back to you as soon as we possibly can this year, 2014, to provide that information so you, council, can make some decisions to turn some of the one-way streets into two-way streets or complete streets. As we know, they may stay one way, but they may have bike lanes or wider sidewalks or sharing the street with other modes of transportation, a mixture of modes of transportation. And at that meeting, it was clear to me that that motion was, that staff recommendation was going down. It was not going to be supported. And we would be left in limbo at that period of time in December with no direction provided to staff. So with that feeling around the table, I tabled that motion in December at GIC, and I engaged my colleague from Ward 8, Councillor Whitehead, who had been one of those councillors expressing concern about the speed at which the one-way, two-way discussion was moving, and wished to slow it down. So I said, well, fair enough. I'm one who's interested in building a community consensus. I'd like to see if we can build relationships between mountain residents and lower city residents from other parts of the city, perhaps Ancaster, Stony Creek with lower city, or up on the mountain, all over the city, to try and build a consensus on this issue. And to leave the issue in limbo didn't seem like a responsible action at that point in time. So that's where this motion came from, this direction came from, to follow the very successful citizens panel engagement process that we undertook with the area rating discussion, a very divisive discussion, where we asked citizens to step in where council had failed. Council had not been able to come to a consensus on area rating during the first couple of terms of council following amalgamation. And we said, you know what, in a situation where council's in limbo and not able to move, we decided to give that issue to folks who could perhaps reduce the rhetoric and reduce the disagreement that we had at council on area rating, and look at the issue afresh and look at all the data and the analysis that was done, examples from other municipalities, and come back to us, which was with an excellent recommendation with the urban-rural split, which was worked on at Councillor Powers, Councillor Collins in particular. The recommendation is to come back to council with a palatable solution based on the citizens panel recommendation on area rating. My direction here is to take, again, a very divisive issue, something that council has really had a difficult time with over the last couple of months, in particular, the one-way, two-way street discussion, and to ask citizens from across the city to speak to each other, lower the temperature on this issue, because we've had a lot of volatile discussions around this table and throughout the media and on social media as well on this issue. Reduce the temperature, have citizens receive research, the benefit of research, and the latest understanding on the benefits and perhaps challenges in some cases of one-way to two-way conversions or complete streets, and come back to council, begin their process in 2014, come back to the new term of council with recommendations on where we should go on this issue. So I'm one who believes strongly in public consultation, community involvement, direct democracy, as we're doing in Ward 1 with our participatory budgeting process. I don't think it's a charade to engage in asking citizens to play a key role in helping council make decisions, especially when council appears hamstrung on the one-way, two-way street issue. You know, I'll take this back just a bit further, Mr. Deputy Mayor, a frustration of mine, certainly when it happened. I moved a motion to develop a one-way, two-way street implementation team. The language was implementation team, and this council, some of one of the last speaker on this issue in particular, changed that to a study group. I was ready to move implementation team. We've talked about this for many years in Hamilton, the one-way, two-way street issue. Let's move to an implementation team. Let's stop talking about it. But I was forced to change that motion in order to pass it, to go anywhere on this issue, and to change it to a study group. That was frustrating, but Councillor Farr and I have worked on that, and we have a report on Queen Street which makes it quite clear that Queen Street would be much more functional, safer for citizens, safer for motorists, and a better option for moving Ward 8 residents, Mountain residents down to Main and King instead of being stuck on the traffic light at Aberdeen with a two-way street configuration. But, I just have a study group, so I'm not able to bring forth implementation team recommendations. And in sharing that information with Councillor Whitehead, he is still not interested in a two-way street on Queen Street, despite the benefits that we've studied in the report that was done. So that's the background on why I've come forward with this idea of going back to the citizen engagement process, the citizens panel that was so successful in the area rating issue. And sometimes we seriously need the help of citizens to move something ahead, and I think the time is now to do that. My final comment is I'm buoyed or enthused by the comments of Councillor Collins in particular, that he's keen to move some of these streets ahead in the short term. Victoria perhaps, and Wentworth, maybe some of those streets, and I'll certainly bring Queen Street forward if and when we get that opportunity to have that discussion in this term of council. But it was clear to me that opportunity wasn't before us. So this is the direction that we're suggesting here. So, Mr. Deputy Mayor, that's the background and the reason for this motion being in front of us. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McHattie. You have Councillor Pearson, Councillor Farr, then Councillor Clark for the second time. Councillor Pearson, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor, and a lot has been said, and I appreciate the previous speakers, both for and against. I too am concerned about this and was not supportive of it at committee. It's another study. Right now I have a report that I think was circulated to all of us within the last day or so that shows that we've had 11 roads that have been a completed conversion starting since 2002, and we have 9 more roads on the list with average costing and timing that we still haven't done. So there is a list, and I'm sorry to say I don't believe that we have a shortage of work for our staff, that they're just sitting around waiting for more things to do. I think we need to be careful how we go forward with this. When you read the different things that are impacted, I mean, it's not simple decisions, as every councillor knows around this table, to change traffic patterns on streets. There's parking that's affected, there's curbing that's expected, there's signalization, signage, there's all kinds of impacts that have to be addressed before we move forward with this. So we currently have 9 streets on the outstanding list. And ironically, I mean, we were looking at an estimated cost of $95,000 just to fund the updated transportation master plan. And some of these streets, I'm looking at 2 alone, are $50,000 each. So we could actually move forward with some of the monies and keep this momentum going. Not saying we're trying to slow it down, but let's just be proactive in what's already here, and let's keep things going forward. So that was my rationale for saying, you know, we don't need to update this right now. We still have work on a list, and you know, that's the feeling I have with going forward on this. And right now, the total amount of the works on the list is over $1,100,000. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Pearson. Councillor Farr.
Yes, the previous speaker beat me to the punch. There are identified now since the debate, Alan Kirkpatrick sent all of us those low-hanging fruit roads, or those previously identified roads as well, from the TMP. And yeah, I was actually going to make the same point. We could probably achieve for the $95,000 2 of the 9. And Certainly from my perspective, Mr. Deputy Mayor, I kind of look at the price points on some of these conversions, and all due respect to staff, and they're much better at making estimates than I, but I'd be interested to know how much the recent McNabb Street conversion cost us. And I know certainly I did receive an estimate on another street about 2 years ago, and it was like to convert about 8 blocks was $7,000. Residential streets, but to that, I'll take it to the notice of motion that committee would recall following this debate and near the conclusion of what was a good debate at General Issues Committee on this important topic, where I'm bringing forth at our next General Issues Committee what Councillor Collins referred to as the no-brainers. So asking staff in a motion in an upcoming GIC to look at the low-hanging fruit and how we may be able to accommodate that. And that, for me, from my perspective, is in addition to the support that I had for this citizen engagement citywide. And I thought hard about it. It was a tough decision to support the citywide, knowing all that we have been reminded of here tonight, that a great deal of work has been done. A number of streets have already been identified. And as it relates to impact, McNabb, it was relatively low. We actually tweaked about 2-3 weeks following the conversion, but it wasn't Pan Am Stadium. It wasn't that. It was a few calls. It was a bit of an adjustment period for some of the residents, but more were calling to say, I love it. It worked, and it absolutely was important to the implementation of the North End Traffic Management Plan, which is ongoing, as everyone around this table is aware of. So, there are no-brainers, and we could effectively tackle some of this previously identified list. I've already got one vote for when we bring it back as a motion to General Issues Committee, but I didn't want to finish this debate tonight without recognizing the fact that we are actually looking at those previously identified no-brainers.
Thank you, Councillor Farr. Councillor Clark.
Thank you very much. I was pretty sure I stated that I agreed with everything Councillor Collins indicated, and that the 9 streets that are in the list and approved, we should be moving forward on. Pretty sure that's what I said. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Not sure why it wasn't heard. Maybe it's what my great-grandfather Stundon used to tell me, that if your lips are moving, you can't listen. I have to say, quite candidly, that, and to the folks at home, yeah, I did say no to an implementation group. I said yes to a study group, because implementation made it very clear that they were going ahead no matter what. And you don't want to tell the public that you're going ahead no matter what without actually having a study to verify it. My great-grandpa Stundon was correct. I can still hear it. With regards to this process here, I'm still equally a little bit surprised that we're debating it when the partner to the motion isn't here because of bereavement. It wasn't written slowly by the individual in Ward 1. It was written in consultation with Councillor Whitehead, who had the most concerns around the table. He was the most, I think I would describe him as agitated that night. But I just bring that out as a point. I still don't understand what we're trying to accomplish if you have Bold Street, Caroline Street, Duke Street, Hess Street, Houston Street North, John Street North, King William Street, Park Street North, Rebecca, all on a list approved by council for two-way conversions, and we're going to argue and debate on things, and when we haven't completed what we already set forth. I raised this with Councillor Farr quite some time ago. I would have thought that you would have wanted to actually argue in this case for implementation because we already approved them. But I'll leave it to my colleagues whether or not they wish to proceed with this. I cannot support it in the manner that it is. We need to simply move forward.
Thank you, Councillor Clark. Don't have any other speakers on it, but, Councillor Johnson?
Yeah, thank you. And I didn't make it to this meeting, and I apologize. I just have to ask a couple of questions. I did receive this email, so through you to Jerry. Jerry, we've already studied the two-way/one-way streets, correct?
Deputy Mayor, that's correct. The last citywide transportation master plan was the study that these streets were on that one for implementation.
And just to be clear, through you to Jerry, there's a long list, quite a few, that we're looking at converting into two. In fact, Council approved that list, correct?
Through the chair, that's correct.
Okay, so we still have some that were converted, some that still are not converted, but they are on the list to be converted, correct?
Through the chair, there's a list in front of you which was approved.
Right.
How this all came about was the addition of further streets that weren't part of the original transportation master plan. That's how this got bundled. But these ones in front of you, as Councillor Clark indicated, they have been approved, and we work on doing them as we have the other ones.
Okay, so one last question, please, through you to Jerry. So the $95,000 today that we're being asked to approve is to look at a study group, to look at more streets, or to reiterate what's already on this list?
Through the chair, it's to combine this with the additional streets that are on the outstanding business list that have been put there by council throughout the last 4 years. There's a number of them: Wentworth, Sanford, Victoria. So what we did is, rather than do them one off, put them all in, because we will be updating the citywide transportation master plan because it's due to be done. Conversion of streets is just a portion of that overall study that we do.
Then thank you, and sorry that spurred one more. You're saying through you, Deputy Mayor, to Jerry, that we're looking at the master transportation plan anyways. Why are we spending $95,000 just to look at this when it's going to be part of that review anyway?
This money here was for the study as well as the citizen engagement component of it.
Okay, thank you. Those are my questions.
Thank you, Councillor Johnson. Councillor Collins.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. I just want to clarify some things as it relates to budget. On average, we've done about 10 or 11 projects over the last decade, and they're listed in the report that we received the other day. I think it's the chart A, table A. And the most expensive streets have been converted already, so certainly John James, York would top that list in terms of expenditures. Those expenditures have come through the capital budget process. We now have a list on table B. These have all gone through the EA process as part of the downtown transportation master plan. They have yet to be done, and there are no funds in the capital budget to implement any of these that are in table B. We also have a list that falls outside of the downtown transportation master plan, and I referenced some earlier. As you recall, Councillor Morelli and Mr. Mankia were here the other day. Victoria Avenue North has been requested for two-way conversion. Councillor Morelli had asked for Birch, to go two-way. Councillor Marula and I also put, I believe, Wentworth and Sanford has already gone to committee. Staff are to report back on the feasibility of implementing those as two-way. So we have this growing list of requests for two-way conversions, and there are no funds. So a year ago, we asked staff, come back with a financing plan that essentially illustrates to council how we would seek to fund some or all of those streets that are on the list through the capital budget process. We've lost a budget year. We just approved the budget tonight. There are no two-way conversions in the budget that we just passed. So every time we delay, we miss opportunities to come up with a financing strategy that seeks to at least continue with our average of one a year. So every budget year we miss an opportunity to convert another one. So my objective when I asked for this financing strategy last year was to ensure that council understood fully what the financial implications were of going ahead with two-way conversions in general And then we would have all the financial information in front of us, and we could seek to address that through the capital budget process. That's where I'm hoping we're headed with this motion. I really appreciate Councillor McCaddy's initiative, because he's always trying to find compromise, and I don't want to be critical of his efforts, but I just see that there's an opportunity. I'm looking at this list, and that 95,000 could actually fund 2 of the streets that are on this list that have already been approved through downtown. So that's where I'm coming from. I'm with him in terms of, he's been a leader on this issue. So I certainly, I'm not trying to pull the rug out from anyone's feet, but I'm trying to help get us to some I guess, stage of implementation, rather than this will go another year. I've already asked staff. They anticipate that the study that's referenced in this motion will come back in the spring or the summer of 2015. So we will miss, the next council will miss, the next council will miss another budget cycle if we are to agree to this again tonight. And I'm looking for a more aggressive timeline. That's not suggesting that we're going to do 2, 3, 4 a year. All it's asking for is that if council wanted to pursue 2A conversions, how would we afford it, and how would we incorporate it into the budget process? So I just wanted to put that on the table for information purposes.
Thank you, Councillor Collins. Mayor Bertini, just take the chair for a moment. And this is my perspective from the outside looking in. So, from the country, come to the city, been a councillor for 7.5 years, drive the roads, but I'm seeing more and more, we talk about safe streets, and we want to convert one-way to two-way to slow traffic. And I can tell you from the last few accidents in Queen Street, and I've drove, and as I said at committee too, I drive the streets, I watch erratic driving, speeding, cell phone in the hand, and when they come to intersections with the light on, they stop and they wait for the light. When the light turns green, they're still sitting there. Then they gun it, not paying any attention to pedestrians. We have King Street, and King Street here is put the bus lane in now. As I said also, GIC committee, put a bus lane in. We have buses that speed excessively. We have GO buses that go out of town out here 80 kilometers an hour. We have traffic, cars and trucks going down the bus lane, pretending they're going to turn right to come off, put their signal on. As they go through the intersection, a turn off, the right turn, they shut the signal off, they go to the next one, they go all the way down till they get down to Dundurn and then onto the 403 or down to the west end of Hamilton. We need more police enforcement. We need police out there in their SUVs where they can see the drivers on their cell phones and start charging them. If we don't do that, it's going to get worse. There's more and more people on their cell phones. And it's the same as I'm going to go right back down here to Bay and King. Because of the bus lanes and the backup of traffic, it gets congested, and people are trying to get through as the pedestrians are trying to walk through on the walk light. So I can tell you that changeover by putting a bus lane in there is affecting, and it's going to hurt pedestrians. At some point in time, we're going to have more accidents. People are getting more frustrated trying to get through there. And that's just from the outside looking in, okay? And I go that way every day. So does Councillor Ferguson virtually go that way, and Councillor Partridge, if I may speak on your behalf. So we are doing things, trying to make things better, but in reality, unless you travel there and you're every day and you see what's going on, particularly at rush hour, we're causing some problems. So I would ask, and if whoever's the councillors for the areas that they're looking at this, get some more police presence, give them SUVs, start giving these guys on the cell phones tickets. Take the chair back, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Farr.
Yeah, just to reply, being the ward councillor, bulk of the bus lane is in the ward. Buses don't speed. That's what Don Hall told us. It appears that way. I did ask that question, and I did receive an answer. Sometimes when you're right next to it, it feels uncomfortable, no doubt. On the dedicated transit lane or the transit-only lane, the implementation wasn't going too bad. People were starting to find their way. Statistics were starting to show that it was effective as it relates to a greater conversation than just one that includes an automobile, which is one that I understand, or I've grown to understand, is generally widely accepted around this table. The paint was an issue. It has been unsuccessful throughout this disastrous winter, no doubt, and as we have learned through this committee, through General Issues Committee, that is going to be rectified. And it's going to be rectified in a matter of days. maybe a couple of weeks, and at that time, we can get back on track where we can continue to track and study as we were doing, and it proved initially to be a bit of a disaster for the first couple of weeks. It was a big adjustment period, but the studies were coming back in a positive light. Efficiencies with bus travel time, pedestrians and businesses along the route starting to understand and appreciate and adjust, and as well the automotive traffic, which of course we measured before we implemented the transit-only lane, also beginning to adjust. Once we fix the lines and get everything back going again for this year-long project, which wraps up in the fall, so still plenty of time to get back on track, I have also been assured that the authorities will be where they needed to be some months ago before we had to take this, we see this lull in the action, and they will be enforcing accordingly. Just for the record, I've been very much on this file. I do, you know, Robert, I very much appreciate your perspectives, and I do know you commute that way back to your ward every day, and I do appreciate it, but I just wanted to update based on some of your comments where we're at with that. And buses don't speed according to Don Hall.
I have a point of order.
Point of order, Mr. Mayor, please.
We should not be referring to each other by first name, first of all.
Thank you.
Secondly, I would hope the councillor would ask every store that has a no bus lane sign in it to visit those stores and ask them how they're doing.
Thank you, Mayor Bettina. Order, please. All in favor of item number 5. Okay. All in favor? Okay. Who's opposed? Opposed? Can we have standing recorded vote, please? All in favor of standing recorded vote? Standing, I don't know. Okay.
Councillors Ferguson, McCaddy, Farr, and Marula.
Opposed?
Mayor Bertina, Deputy Mayor Pasuda, Councillors Clark, Pearson, Johnson, Powers, Partridge, Jackson, and Collins.
Motion fails, Mr. Deputy Mayor.
Motion fails. Thank you. Let's move on. Item number 6. Item number 7. Item number 8. Item number 9. Item number 10. Item number 11. Mayor Bettina, may please have a motion on the report, sir.
It's moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Partridge, that the 8th report of the General Issues Committee be adopted and the information section received.
All in favor? Thank you. Public Works Committee presents report 14-002 and respectfully recommends item number 1. Item number 2. Item number 3. Item 4. Item number 5. Number 6. Item number 7. Item number 8. Item number 9. Item number 10. On number 10, Councillor Jackson.
Mr. Deputy Mayor, again, this is a back-to-basics item for my constituents in Ward 6 on the East Mountain. Special Capital Reinvestment Reserve Fund. I had saved this, I had initially parked this amount of money, Mr. Deputy Mayor, thinking about the Barton Secondary School situation and the fact that it's been announced for closure. And I had promised the community in the Bearsfield neighborhood, some of the community leaders that I had met with over the last few years since the high school review, that I would be there on standby for them in the event that the school closed. We've been able to buy a bit of a reprieve. As you know, Barton will stay open in some form fashion for at least another 2.5 years till the summer of 16. There'll be an opportunity hopefully to replenish some of this capital reserve from the Ward 6 end of things. So, Mr. Deputy Mayor, these two neighborhoods of the Bearsfield neighborhood and the Sherwood neighborhood that need some basic asset renewal, and we heard at committee the other day, Mr. Deputy Mayor, if you could believe it, our asset renewal fund has $0 in it, and this is one of those wonderful capital renewal funds where instead of just ripping up an entire road to do full reconstruction of roads, sidewalks, sewer, and water mains, This has been a great program through Director Gary Moore and people like Rick Andoga and staff, John Murray, that have for several years put in place where there's sections of a road that need to be repaved, redone, where there's sections of a sidewalk that are damaged and in bad condition, replace those, stretch out the dollars as much as possible, and be able to do more and save taxpayers money and inconvenience without unnecessarily having to rip up a road. So within the Bearsfield neighborhood, which is the Barton Secondary School neighborhood, roads that I'm looking at, hopefully with this approval tonight, Mr. Deputy Mayor, will be the likes of the Reno, Palmer Roads, Thorley, Behan, and in the Sherwood neighborhood, we've got on the radar Oakcrest, Elmhurst, Velcrest, and some others. So, Mr. Deputy Mayor, I'm really pleased that hopefully we can move forward on this from an asset renewal back to basics infrastructure improvement program. Thanks, Mr. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Jackson. On number 10? Number 11? Number 12? Number 13? 13?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Councillor Ferguson.
We had a good presentation from staff on the whole issue of emergency detour routes. And we had a staff sergeant in from the OPP to talk to us about, the number of accidents and the length of them and why we're getting so many and why these accidents are taking so long to clean up. It's almost becoming a weekly event now when the 403 gets closed. And that causes terrible inconvenience to the motoring public, let alone the wear and tear on whether it's Longwood Road or Dundurn or York or Wilson or Garner, that we need an emergency detour route. And you can see here that we supported the staff recommendation for the 403 for the emergency detour route around the 403. And it wasn't an easy thing to do because we had the escarpment there. It would be Highway 52, Highway 6, and Highway 5 with advanced warning signs and a compass system, which is changeable message boards and also cameras that the media can use and citizens at home to take a look at where these accident scenes are. But the bigger problem is we've experienced almost a doubling of these accidents recently on 403. The police attribute it to speed and congestion. And why it's taking so long to clean these things up now is requests from the courts and from insurance companies on information. They have to gather all the information before they can reopen. But I had an opportunity to talk to the staff sergeant after the meeting, and he was telling me, he told me now I can talk publicly about this. They're experimenting with drones where they actually have some on as part of their assets now. Where they'll send a drone up and do an aerial photograph of an accident scene. So rather than have to do measurements with survey equipment on the ground for skid marks and locations, and they can do this from aerial photographs now and actually reduce significantly the amount of time that the road has to remain closed in order to gather evidence. It can be done from aerial photographs from these drones that they would bring to the site, put up in the air, and then do an aerial photograph on it, which is pretty neat. And it's emerging technology. And, I tell you, from my perspective, I really encourage them to move forward with this emerging technology. But I think the public needs to know that we know there's a problem. We're trying to deal with it. We're trying to get these emergency detour routes in to send heavy trucks in particular around roads that are designed to carry them and cause less congestion in our own internal arterial roads. So it was a very interesting presentation. I think it was David Ferguson from the Public Works Department had a lot of preparation done. So we're not ignoring the public. I hear about it regularly. We're taking action, and so with the police. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ferguson. On item 13 then? Item 14? Councillor Marula may please have a motion on the report.
It's moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Collins, that we received the report before us.
All in favor? Thank you.
Councillor Partridge, may I have a motion, please, to rise and report?
Yes, you can, Mr. Mayor. It's moved by myself and seconded by Mayor Bettina that the Committee of the Whole rise and report. Thank you.
All in favor? Carried. Thanks to the Deputy Mayor for conducting the committee agenda. And now we go to motions. And Councillor Marula, you have a motion on Registry of Cultural Heritage Buildings.
I do indeed. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's whereas the Memorial School located at 1175 Main Street East, Hamilton Ward 3, is believed to be of cultural heritage value or interest and may be worthy of designation under part of the Ontario Heritage Act. And whereas W.H. Ballard Public School located at 801 Dunsmuir Road, Hamilton Ward 4, is believed to be a cultural heritage value or interest and may be worthy of designation. Therefore, be it resolved that the following consultation with the Hamilton Municipal Heritage Committee, Memorial School and Ballard School be included in a register
of property of cultural heritage value or interest as non-designated properties, and B, that planning staff be directed to prepare a staff report and preliminary screenings of the Memorial City School and W.H. Ballard Public School in accordance with council-approved designation process and report back to the Planning Committee and Council for direction and prioritization. And that's seconded by Councillor Collins.
All in favor? Councillor Johnson, a motion on the Croatian Center.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. And as we all know, that when an establishment applies for a liquor license, we can no longer just ask for some conditions. And so we have to deny it, and then we get to sit down and put some conditions on. So I apologize, but we have some issues. We just need to sort them out, and it'll go through. I'm very confident, but we just need to put some guidelines in. Thank you. So the motion's in front of you right now. It's moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Maria Pearson, and this is for the liquor license, please. Thank you.
Thank you. I have to apologize to clerks because they should have declared an interest. So I'll do that now and call on the vote. All in favor? Thank you. Any objection? Any against? Sorry. Councillor Whitehead has requested that his item be tabled for the next meeting, item 7.3. The amending motion to 7.3 respecting the consideration of an overpass bylaw. 7.4. Yeah, table both. Okay. All right. All in favor of tabling? Any comments? No, you can't comment on a tabling motion. Notices of motion, cooling off period. Councillor Marula.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I'm moving a motion whereas many senior levels of government have adopted policies imposing post-employment cooling off periods on senior staff to ensure the integrity of processes and decision-making of the governing body. And whereas there may be benefits to having such a policy at the City of Hamilton, therefore be it resolved the staff be directed to explore the feasibility of instituting a cooling off period as part of the City of Hamilton's corporate policies and or employment agreements that would limit the ability of former senior level staff from working for organizations in dealing with the City of Hamilton involving matters with which the former staff member had significant dealings during the last year of service with the City, and report to the Audit, Finance and Administration Committee.
Standing as a motion. Notice. Thank you. And
I have another notice, sir.
You do?
Yeah.
Go.
And I'm going to be moving that staff be directed, whereas our legal fees on our operating budget are significant on an annual basis, and whereas the City of Hamilton has never sought an assessment of those legal fees, therefore be it resolved that we seek an assessment of the Provincial Assessment Office of all of our legal fees over the last 12 months.
That's notice?
Yes.
Thank you. And Councillor Farr, you have a notice.
Yeah, it's before everybody. It's revolving around the outcomes of a motion where we denied, and that was a liquor license application. This revolves around the Rock Bar 15S South. So it's a notice motion, Mr. Mayor, that I wish to waive the rules on after legal have gotten together with the...
Seconder? Councillor McKee. Seconded by Councillor Jackson. All in favor of waiving the rules for the Rock Bar motion? Carried. Thank you. Go ahead, Councillor.
So, yeah, I was just about to say, Mr. Mayor, there that I wanted to appreciate that legal had gotten together with the new owners, and we've come to an agreement through some work through the Durand Neighborhood Association, myself, and all the other people involved. So, yeah, the motion is before us. It obviously, seconded by Councillor McCaddy. And it obviously emphasizes what was negotiated so we can move forward with this particular establishment. Thank you.
Everyone good? All in favor? Thank you. No other notices, statements, members of council, any items of interest? And we'll start off with Councillor Clark. Or we can start somewhere else.
No, I'm fine, thank you.
Go ahead. Oh, Councillor Pearson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I've got a few items this evening. Just want to bring to the residents' attention that on Friday, April the 18th, from 8 a.m. to 11 a.m., the Stony Creek Lions Club will be having their pancake breakfast and Easter egg hunt with the Easter Bunny. It's going to be held at the Lions Hall, and residents can attend, call Lion Allison at 905-664-2208. And there's also a Lions and Paws open house that's going to be held Wednesday, April 23rd from 6 to 9 p.m. And you can learn more about the Lions Club and all the great work that they do. And I apologize, I'm just going to go back. With regards to the pancake breakfast and Easter egg, actually the contact is Lion Linda, and she can be reached at 905-385-2071. And it will be pancakes and sausage, cost per child $4 and adults $6. So leave that. A few other things I know that I sent out in my newsletter this month in the Stony Creek News. It's Team Up to Cleanup Month, participating with Tim Hortons, and I'm just going to put a plug in for the website, encouraging residents to get out, clean up the neighborhoods. I'll just put a little bit in that this past weekend I had the opportunity of visiting the state of Georgia. I was in Atlanta, and wow, is it ever spotless. So I want to encourage our residents to get out, participate, and see how we can compete. Mind you, their trees are all in bloom, their tulips are in bloom. It's absolutely gorgeous. But so the website is www.hamilton.ca/team up to clean up, or call 905-546-2489. And staff will be pleased to supply residents who wish to get out and participate with special litter and recycling bags, gloves, and graffiti wipes. So I encourage everyone, please don't hesitate to also call my offices if there's something that I can assist with or participate as well. And I'm at 905-973-7418 is my cell. Another opportunity is the City of Hamilton is holding their annual rain barrel truckload sale. That's on Saturday, April 26th from 8 a.m. to 12 p.m. It's at Mohawk College Fennel campus. And for a cost of $39.75 for a new barrel, $39.50 for a repurposed barrel. Residents can obtain these, and they can take advantage of saving their rainwater off their gutters and using it for watering through the summer. There's more information that's in my newsletter, and they can also go to the city website, www.rainbarrel.ca/Hamilton. And again, another great bit of information, and I'm excited because this is something I've kind of kept my councillor colleagues aware of over the last number of months, and this is the SO Cup, Stony Creek Girls Hockey SO Cup, coming to Stony Creek Gateway Ice. The event will be kicking off April the 20th to the 26th. And you know, Mr. Mayor, we were in an event this morning where we had Laura Fortino from the Canadian Olympic Girls Hockey Team. She will be participating at the Gateway Ice for the SO Cup because she actually started out with the Stony Creek Girls Hockey. So I'm really thrilled about that. This again was something that I worked on actually with the participants and with the Hockey Canada Association to bring the event here. And what it does is it allows our girls to be the host, being the host community, will be in the event. There will be 5 other teams across Canada, the top teams, and they will be playing. The final game will be televised by TSN on the Sunday. So I hope to be at every game, or as many games as possible, and certainly for the puck drop on the 20th. And I encourage everyone to get out. This is at Gateway Ice on South Service Road and Fruitland Road. One more item, Mr. Mayor, and this is a little bit of a sadder one I just want to mention. It's a fundraiser that is will be going on. It'll be on Friday, April the 11th at 8 o'clock till midnight. It's a fundraiser for a good friend of mine whose daughter has been suffering from Lyme disease for several years. And the resident's name is Miss Goss, and her daughter Anita has been suffering from Lyme disease for many, many years. And unfortunately, it's not a recognized illness in Ontario. And they are lobbying the government to change the legislation so that she can get the assistance paid through Ontario health insurance here in Canada, but she can't at this point. So they are fundraising so that she can go to the States, somewhere in Florida, if I'm not mistaken, to get the help that she needs. So the fundraiser is being held at Knights of Columbus Hall at 222 Queenston Road, Hamilton. Again, Friday, April the 11th, 8 till 1 a.m. Tickets are $20. And you can call Francis at 905-388-0103 or Nancy at 905-662-6904. Donations can also be made at any CIBC branch to Anita Cost Trust Fund number 03-662-010-8593-183. And just as an aside, the show that evening will feature talents of Bobby Naffolk and Anthony Carboni as Tom Jones, and I think Bobby is Elvis impersonator. Kathy Carboni, and Richard Wolf, also as Elvis. So it should be an exciting evening. I'm going to do my best to get out there and assist in any way I can. I've contributed a door prize, so hopefully they will be able to raise some dollars and help Anita. Mr. Mayor, thank you. And if anyone's missed the phone numbers, they will be in my newsletter that's in the Stony Creek News this week. Thank you.
Councillor Johnson?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm going to give you a whole list of things very quickly, and then for all the details, just refer to my website, www.brendajohnson.ca. We have 2 cleanups coming up this Saturday. One's in Winona at the Community Park from 9 to 12. The other one's in Mount Hope, and it's from 1 to 4. And the one in Bimbrook is actually on April the 27th at 1:30 at the fairgrounds. Also this Saturday, Wesley United Church in Fruitland is having their Easter Bunny Brunch, and it's $8, and it's from 11 to 2. So also on April the 15th, the Fruitland-Winona Secondary Plan is coming to the Planning Committee. We have Easter egg hunts that you must register at. April the 18th, Good Friday, we have one in Bimbrook and one in Mount Hope. The one in Mount Hope actually has a pancake breakfast that is put on by the Lions Club, and that's from 8 to 11. So in Winona, we have our Easter egg hunt on the Saturday following. Bimbrook Little Theatre is performing Perfect Wedding, and it's starting at April the 19th to May the 3rd. And also on April the 26th, pancake breakfast at Christ Church in Woodburn at 9 o'clock. It's to 12. This is to raise money for the Erland Lee Museum. And the great news is the Federal Women's Institute of Ontario are going to pack up all their bags in Guelph and move into the museum. So now we sustain the museum. It's now in good hands, and it's safe, and it's great to go. And the last thing is, on April the 26th, Case United Church is having all-you-can-eat spaghetti dinner. Again, refer to my website, and you'll get more details. Thank you, sir.
Councillor Ferguson. Councillor Pasuda.
Thank you, Mayor Bettina. First of all, I'd like to say we had our play in Rockton, our dinner theater, 6 nights, very successful, and I know you were there with your wife, Carol.
Yep.
And I hope you enjoyed the show.
Yeah, you were great.
I was good, thank you. So you had lots of comments on that one. On March the 30th at the Strabane Church, we had an ARC meeting there. Some of the residents, parents of kids going to Millgrove School, which is in Councillor Partridge's ward, and if she wants to speak to that, had a good meeting down there, good transfer of information back and forth, and a good working group that night. So that's trying to keep Millgrove School open. So both Councillor Partridge and I are working that. I represented you, Mr. Mayor, at the TO 2015's Municipal Forum in Royal Botanical Gardens last Friday, and opened it up there and spoke of our city. The Heritage Awards in Ancaster, Councillor Ferguson's ward the other night on April the 7th at the Old Ancaster Town Hall, and once again, Mayor Bettina, your wife, and yourself were there.
We were.
And you made did presentations and lots of pictures, so you got yourself out there and got very good on that. And Councillor Ferguson hosted that at for the Heritage Awards, so that was well done. It was a good night. I attended the Rockton Lions meeting last night in Rockton with our school trustee for wards 14 and 15, Karen Turkstra. Because of the closing of schools in West Flamborough, where they're looking at one of the potential sites is the Beverly Community Center, where the ice rink is there, to build a school there. So Karen and I met last night with the Lions, about 50 of them and their Lions group, to present what our thoughts are and what the vision is for some of the parents on the ARC committee. So we did that. Farming out there is late this year. We still got a lot of frost in the ground. Even at my place, I have to go and move snow on the weekend because I still got piles of snow banks back to my equipment shed, so I got to move some snow. Hopefully more of it will melt. It's going to be difficult spring, or it's going to be later for a lot of the farming products coming on, asparagus and things like that. It'll be later. So hopefully that'll work out. Getting calls about the trees that are still down in people's yards. We've got a lot over in Greensville that haven't been picked up. If they phone it in, but I'm on the radar right now to get out there, and I'm going to go have a tour in the next 2 days to see if we can try to move them off the lawns. What's going to happen with a lot of the manicured lawns, a lot of the trees piled up is going to kill the grass off. We don't want to see that happen out there. And the last thing, on Wednesday, April the 16th at Copetown Community Center, the Share Agriculture Foundation is having a dinner. And the funds from this that focuses on Central and South America, and it's for guidance, expertise in agriculture to teach those communities how to grow their food. And it's a good cause, and I'm going to be there. So, and I'd like to thank everyone for the opportunity to be deputy mayor for the month of April.
Right, more to come. Councillor Partridge.
More to come. Yes, and thank you to Councillor Pasuta for raising that community meeting that we had with the Mill Grove parents. And they're starting to rally and come together. And we will be looking to be here on April the 29th, April the 29th here at City Hall Council Chambers for the school board. That will be the evening for delegations for the West Flamborough Arc. And I encourage everyone across the city to consider attending all of the delegation nights for different arcs across the city, because I think it's really important that we show good support to all of our residents that are subject to schools being closed. And I know the Mill Grove parents, they're in shock, but they are coming together, and we are going to work very, very strongly with them. Also want to mention that the Carlisle Optimists are having their Easter egg hunt on the 19th of Saturday, and it will be at 11 a.m. They do it a little different. They have the little ones that are age 2 to 6 go out first and collect the eggs. And then a couple of minutes later, they let the others, different age groups, go out. So the little ones aren't being run over, and candy isn't being picked up or kicked farther, or some of the other shenanigans that take place. Then everyone's invited to bring their own decorated basket to help pick up the goodies that are on the ground. And the whole thing's usually over within 20 minutes, but it's a really good time. Wear your rubber boots. We have an awful lot of flooding throughout my ward, and I know throughout Councillor Pasuta's as well. The rivers are backing up to the point where we had crews out on Carlisle Road for 3 or 4 nights. They were dredging and digging up and laying in big pipe and trying to get the water, which had gone right across Carlisle Road, and it was extremely dangerous. The crews did a great job, and I just, I want to say, with all of the storm damage that we've had, what I am hearing from residents more and more, especially over the last couple of weeks, is what a fabulous job they've done. The residents just think it is absolutely wonderful that they can still put all of the debris out at the end of their driveway. The crews are coming by. They're working 6 days a week. Even Saturday afternoon when they were going down the concessions and through the surveys, the residents were out thanking them, shaking their hands, and just they have nothing but top marks for the cleanup that's happening, particularly in Flamborough. And I know you don't usually get a lot of accolades from Flamborough, so I just wanted to pass that on. And please pass it on to the crew. And lastly, Knox Church, that's located on Mill Street, and Church in Waterdown. They're having their weekly Saturday morning breakfast. It's every Saturday. It's from 8:30 until 10:30. All you can eat. We get a couple of hundred people that come out. Many of us are regulars, and invite everyone to drop in and say hi to the folks. Thank you.
Is there any maple syrup out your way, by the way?
Yeah, actually the maple syrup is running. They need cold nights and warm sunny days to actually get the sap running. It's way behind this year. I would say it's probably 2 to 3 weeks behind. So the sap will be running. A lot of the maple trees, the sap is running. In the storm damage where the maple trees were split, they can actually bleed to death, because the maple syrup is just running out, and when the trees are split, there's nothing to stop that maple syrup, and it really does a lot of damage to the trees. So good news and bad news on that.
I know I was jogging through there, and I heard somebody yell out, "The sap is running," so I thought the maple syrup. And Councillor Jackson.
Oh, he pulled that out of the drawer of the radio days. Okay, very good, Mr.
Just practicing.
Oh, Mr. Mayor, following on the Easter egg hunt theme, of course, Chris Eklund and his volunteers usually donate close to 100,000 eggs across about 20 different neighborhood parks across the city. So look for them on Chris Eklund's website. come the Good Friday and Easter Monday, Easter weekend, which is starting April the 18th, Good Friday, through to Monday, April 21st. Also, specifically on Good Friday, April 18th, Easter egg hunt, Mountain Kids Club, Kathy Archer and her great group of volunteers will have an Easter egg hunt from 11:30 in the morning to 4 p.m. specifically at Mountain Drive Park, which is at the corner of Upper Gauge and Concession. Kathy Archer, thank you so much for what you do as one of the purest of purest volunteers. Mr. Mayor, also there's a fundraising dinner on Friday, June 6th. It's a fundraising evening at the Hamilton Firefighters Banquet Hall. Now, Laura Jean Falla and her sister Nancy Reevy have sent this to me quickly. Last summer, when there was a major thunderstorm, Emmanuel House, run by Good Shepherd Centers, had some flooding. They didn't have a generator. And so they realized with all the palliative care patients and those vulnerable patients and residents of Emmanuel House, something needed to be done to hopefully avoid and prevent that kind of situation in the future. On Friday, June 6th, $20 a person from 8 p.m. to midnight. They're holding this fundraiser at the Firefighters Banquet Hall on Dartnell Road, just south of Rymal Road. All proceeds, money raised, will go for buying a generator for Emmanuel House. And Laura Jean Falla you can reach her at 905-393-4221. That's 393-4221. And Mr. Mayor, to the thousands of members of our Jewish community, blessed Passover from my office and I, and to the thousands upon thousands of Christians, happy Easter over the next 10 days. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Collins.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I have 4 community cleanups that planned again this year, similar to last year. First one's at Davis Creek. It's at Green Hill Park, Saturday, April 26th, from 9 till 12. It's on Green Hill Avenue next to Quigley Road. The next one I have is the Beach Community Cleanup. It'll be held at the Beach Rescue Unit on Saturday, May the 3rd, from 9 to 12. That's at 316 Beach Boulevard. The third community cleanup I have is Rosedale, in the Rosedale community at Rosedale Arena, 100 Green Hill Avenue, Saturday, May the 3rd, from 12 until 2:30. And the last one I have is Riverdale Community Cleanup. It's at Warden Park, 55 Lake Avenue North, Saturday, May the 10th, from 9 until 12 noon.
Is that it? Okay, Councillor Marula. Councillor Farr.
Thank you. Just some past events. The PVW2 2014 launch party where we met our facilitator, saw a great crowd last week here in council chambers. A lot of people looking forward to participating and submitting ideas in this citizen-led engagement and empowerment exercise. I'm looking very much forward to the next few months. St. Lawrence at the Martyr Parish, the Easter ham and turkey roll. Well done, Mo Scally from the Ward 2 office. I know you like to watch council. 2 turkeys, 1 ham, and 1 LCBO gift certificate, all in 1 turkey roll. She's always lucky, and me not so much, but what a great time in the North End. Conservation Restoration of Hamilton Built Heritage, they had that last evening or the evening before at the Workers' Arts and Heritage, and it was an overwhelming success. 60 plus, I'm here, we're on the waiting list, so they were very much at capacity, and it was a great educational night brought to you by all the neighborhood associations here in Ward 2, and there's no corner of the ward that's not covered by an NA. Tomorrow night, live music and art sale. The Paparella Innovative Art Program goes at the Freeway Cafe. I'll be there, and I'm looking forward to it. Volunteer Hamilton is celebrating its 16th annual Community Builders Breakfast at Michelangelo's, calling for 1,200 youth to contribute 3,600 hours tomorrow in the Change the World Ontario Youth Challenge. That's in participation with a provincial exercise. Thursday, April the 10th, it's Suicide Prevention Community Council's Blarney 6.93 kilometer walk or run at Bayfront. It's $50. You get a great shirt with that. Registration at 4:30, and it's limited to 500 runners. The Catholic Women's League Easter Bake Sale goes at St. Lawrence on Palm Sunday, right after the 10:30 Mass. April the 26th, 11 to 7, the Friends of Haiti Food Truck event at Ferguson Station. That's a first-time event. It'll be fun. Monday, April the 28th, 6:30 to 9:30, the Barton Tiffany Urban Design Study at Leuna Station. This is a public consultation, and it's the second go-round there at the King George Ballroom. art crawl this Friday. And finally, I want to thank everybody for their patience, their understanding, and their appreciation of our transit-only lane pilot. Obviously, as noted earlier today in council, we did hit a lull this winter. We had some fading paint we weren't able to enforce in a timely fashion, but it's all back on track in a matter of days. This, of course, was supported by the majority of our council as it related to our unanimous support of the Rapid Ready Plan. Page 34 talked about the TO lane, where we have it installed now. I want to thank International Village BIA. I was at their AGM after installation, valuable input, and a large majority of business people in favor. The Downtown BIA, after installation, reporting positive results early on. And the King West BIA, I will admit, that's 2 blocks, Caroline to Queen. I surveyed all of Bay through to Queen before we voted on this, and as you'll recall, the stats showed, and there was lots of staff that were with me that day to verify, about 18 to 25 business owners and managers were in favor, a lot of them speaking to making moves, progressive moves that benefit the downtown and the city as a whole. There's been a tough adjustment since that survey was done, no doubt about it. Since the implementation, the King West BIA AGM did see about 6 businesses present. All were having difficulty with this change because change is difficult for some. They were most affected because their parking moved across the street, and it was difficult, and I continue to work with them and gather their input, and their input is very important to me and to all of the staff and the folks who are working hard on this pilot that was endorsed by the Mayor and Council. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor McHattie.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor, and you and I and Councillor Clark and Councillor Pearson were present at the Hamilton and Halton Home Builders Association breakfast this morning, and we were there to hear from the new president of the HHBA, Nando De Caria, and he spoke eloquently, I thought, for about 15 minutes. He was in a difficult spot because Laura Fortino was also there, our great Canadian Olympic hockey player, the women's Olympic hockey player, and her presentation was just outstanding. As she had a great slide presentation and a number of incredible quotes, inspirational quotes about teamwork and extraordinary wording from her, and a sense of the 9 months that they spent to the women's Olympic hockey team preparing for the Olympics, and then just what it was like through the series right into to the end of the game and how it was won. And Mr. Mayor, you described specifically Laura's coolness under pressure. To everybody's yelling, as you said, for her to shoot, and she passed it off to the person that was exactly in the position to put the puck in the net. So it was extraordinary to hear her. I hope she puts up some of that material she shared this morning on her website or somewhere that all of us can see it, because it was quite extraordinary. The second item I have is one of my constituents, Eric Bombaka, is a proud member of the Amalgamated Transit Union here in Hamilton, our own ATU, the bus drivers and HSR folks. And today they were celebrating the International Day of Pink. And that's a day to talk about the importance of diversity and anti-bullying in particular. Anti-bullying was the focus they had this morning. They were at the McNabb Street bus terminal this morning, and they were handing out flowers to people, pink flowers to all sorts of folks, men and women, and sharing that message of diversity. And I just wanted to show the T-shirt that they provided to people celebrating diversity, the Day of Pink, the ATU folks this morning, and talking about the importance of acceptance, tolerance, and understanding, building that as a community. And they were really proud to be the first union in Hamilton to bring that message forward and writ large this morning at 7 o'clock, starting at 7 o'clock this morning, down at the McNabb Street terminal. So I think we can be very proud of our ATU folks, and I told them I would mention it tonight because it was, I think, pretty extraordinary leadership on their part, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks. I'll be quick. I attended the gathering of the Highland regiments from all over Canada at the armories this past Friday night, and it was a really incredible. There was hardly anybody from Hamilton there, except for, of course, our own Argyles and Rick Kennedy and Lawrence Hatfield and others. but Hamilton really has a commanding presence among the Highland units, even from England. We had Sergeant Stuart Young, and he couldn't get over the authenticity and the fact that there were cut glass servings at every of the 70 table settings, and he was so envious of that. So we have a very special presence in our city of our garrison, of our regiments, and so on. So that was fun. And I'm going to rush now because I got to be up at 7:30 in the morning to go to the volunteers event, the community building event. So, Councillor Pasuta, I need a motion on the bills list.
Mr. Mayor Bertina, moved by myself and second by Councillor Brad Clark, that bills number 14-070 to 14-087, my glasses, getting old, 087, no Councillor, be passed and the corporate seal be affixed thereto, and that the bylaws be numbered and signed by the mayor and the city clerk to read as follows, sir.
And any discussion on bill number 70, 71, 72, 73, 74, 75, 76, 77, 78, 79, 80, 81, 82, 83, 84, 85, 86, 87. May I please have a motion to adjourn? Kirsten Johnson, all in favor? Carried. Thank you. Good night, everybody.